Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The leaf spring army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь. Ваши жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 595 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And Israel is going in.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine and in Israel. Tonight, we will be covering Israel second. However, it will not be the first thing in the news because there are very major and very pressing things going on in Ukraine tonight. Of course, many of y'all have seen the title that says that Russia has lost 100 tanks in a day. We actually couldn't include that, and we also couldn't include another caveat as well to it. But it has been confirmed that in the area of Avdiivka, the Russians have lost over 100 tanks and armored personnel carriers just today. The amount of losses has been insurmountably high. We have never seen losses this high in the armored categories since the war began. It is absolutely incredible, absolutely unbelievable, and a massive testament to the Ukrainian defensive forces at Avdiivka, and also, once again, a damnation of the Russian army's offensive abilities at this point in the war. Before we begin, however, I would love to ask that all of y'all hit the like button that just joined us right now. Hitting the like button helps this channel to reach on out to more folks and let them know what we're doing over here, how we cover the news, and also hopefully get around to being here for our Sunday fundraisers, which would be great because we'll be running another one this weekend and we will be trying to figure out something neat. And if it doesn't work out, we'll just do our normal fundraiser for a normal nonprofit. But nevertheless, we are now going to be moving into the news at Avdiivka. Also, another thing I'd like to say really quickly is that I once again thank everyone for being here with us tonight. It is unbelievable to know that the Lee Springer Army has continued to stand strong regardless of what's been going on and regardless of what has been happening out there in the world. And to that, I thank you all. I thank you all for standing with us and trusting our decision-making, especially in this very trying and difficult time. I've got to be honest with y'all. I'm usually going through the days right now just filled with anxiety and fear, but nevertheless, it's great to know that many of y'all continue to back us up and support us as we continue to do what we have to do. But moving on from that, we are now going to be moving on down into the city of Avdiivka and what has been going on here over the past 24 hours. Specifically, really what's been going on over the past 48 hours. Many of y'all may know that Russian forces have started to conduct a major offensive operation within the area of the city of Avdiivka. Avdiivka is the largest settlement that is directly on the front lines right now, and we can see that this is a continuation of the Russian doctrine of strike at whatever is closest and most important to the front lines. We saw this happen last year with Bakhmut. Bakhmut was the largest and most important town closest to the Russian lines last year, and we saw the Russians, of course, conduct a grueling offensive for Bakhmut. It ended up being the bloodiest and longest battle of the war, costing the Russians somewhere around 50,000 dead just to take the city over the course of around 9 months, and really get nothing more than that. In fact, even now, the Russians are still losing territory around the Bakhmut area, But we'll be getting into that as well later tonight, because it looks like that may actually come to a halt, at least for a short while. Meanwhile, down in the area of Avdiivka, the Russians did begin the offensive much like they did at Bakhmut, and it appears that they are also attempting to encircle the city of Avdiivka because their entire offensive effort is focused around the village of Krasnoarivka. A long time ago, we actually said that Russian forces were most likely taking Krasnoarivka so that way it could be an anchor point for further offensives deeper into the Donetsk region, and also to attempt to encircle Avdiivka and force the Ukrainian defenders inside of the city to retreat to a more favorable defensive location, which we really wouldn't know where that is beyond Avdiivka. So you can tell that in this specific part of the front lines, well, at least Avdiivka is a very important town or city to hold. Avdiivka is also considerably large as well, and if the Russians do take it, they will have another somewhat larger town under their belt, but strategically it won't really provide much to the Russians, at least in as far as this frontline position goes, and its infrastructure and logistical abilities and so on. It's not really going to be providing that much of a benefit, but what happened here today can only be described as an absolute slaughter. I'm going to take y'all up here really quickly to our location unknowns and the casualty report for the day, because before we even get into this, I have to show y'all what the Russian losses have been, to give y'all an idea of how badly the past day has gone near Avdiivka. From what we can understand, almost all of these losses, somewhere around 80% of these losses in each category, most likely came from the area of Avdiivka today. Of course, you can give or take another 10% off of that, take it down to about 70 or even 65%. But the amount of losses that we've seen over the past 24 hours have been absolutely brutal. Here is the Russian casualty report for today.
Good Lord, man, they got 4 Bobcats.
That's it, man. He's like, had to get these losses. Oh my God. And they did. They got 4 Bobcat skid steers, which is pretty nuts. But what's even more nuts is that 820 Russian soldiers have been lost in 24 hours. This is the highest loss number that we've seen over a month and a half of fighting inside of Ukraine. Absolutely unbelievable. But what's even crazier than that is that they've lost 91 armor personnel carriers in 24 hours. That is the highest single number we've seen in a day over the course of the entire war. That is equivalent to 3 battalion tactical groups of armored personnel carriers being destroyed, and from what we know, most of those were destroyed around the area of Avdiivka. We've got a considerable amount of video and picture evidence of all of the destroyed armor outside of Avdiivka, but sadly we weren't really able to get all of these losses on picture and video evidence today, but still an unbelievable number. Not only that, but we also saw that 20 supply trucks were destroyed. It appears that their ability to attack the logistics is getting better again and improving. We also saw that they were able to knock out an entire 34 tanks. 34 tanks.
That's a ton, man. Are those their older ones or newer ones? Do we know like what the type of tanks were that they mainly knocked out?
From what we know, it's kind of a mix. I've heard that there may have been a T-62 or 2 in the mix today that ended up getting destroyed, but most of them were T-72s and a smaller number of them were T-80s. So somewhat more modern stuff, but we haven't really been able to get an exact dial down on what variants of the T-72s and 80s were lost, whether they were earlier iterations or the more modern iterations like the T-72B3 or the T-80BVM. We haven't really been able to get that information, but 34 tanks lost in a single day, regardless whether the tanks are old or new, is absolutely unbelievable. If we were to take the tank losses and the armored personnel carrier losses, and we were to put this up into a battalion tactical group, like let's just say we're knocking out a battalion tactical group each, enough armored personnel carriers and tanks were lost today that 3 entire battalion tactical groups have been destroyed on the front lines in the past 24 hours. That number is unbelievably high. Usually when we see losses like these, we are counting them in how much of a battalion tactical group would have been lost, just a singular battalion tactical group. So usually the losses would be half of a battalion tactical group, maybe a quarter, maybe a third. That's usually where we see those numbers hanging around at. Today though, 3 entire battalion tactical groups. That is equivalent manpower of 2,400 soldiers of the Russian army have just lost all of their armor that was supporting them today. And honestly, this makes our title a little misleading because 100 is a nice round number. And we decided to go with 100 instead of around 125, because 125 is actually the actual loss count if we include the APVs and the tanks together. Nevertheless, it's still absolutely incredible to see that the Ukrainians have inflicted such monumental losses today. Unbelievable. We'll be taking y'all down to Avdiivka in a minute and showing y'all the graveyard of tanks that exists down there in the fields. But we also saw that they took out 18 artillery pieces, 19 drones, 1 MLRS, 1 aircraft. We've currently not been able to identify the aircraft, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. Overall, today was a record-setting day in the tanks and armored personnel carrier category. We've never seen losses this high before, period, in either of those categories. And so, have to say, huge credit to the armed forces of Ukraine for being able to defend the country today. We have seen that their casualty reports from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense and then republished by Kyiv Independent have been incredibly accurate over the past 2 years nearly. And so we have no reason to doubt the validity of these claims of the amount of losses that were taken today. Absolutely unbelievable. And I'm completely blown away. Just insane to see. And I see a lot of people saying clickbait because I only put 100, I didn't put 125. And you're right, it is clickbait because that's a well-rounded number. If we were exact, it is around 125 exactly. But I decided that it would be better to say 100 than 125 because of course that just kind of looks better for a title. But nevertheless, once you come in and you see it's more losses, we're actually clickbaiting in a negative way, I guess, because the number's smaller than it really is. But anyways, let's move on from the casualty report that we've already covered, and let's go down to Avdiivka and see where most of these losses came from. To start off with something that it doesn't show y'all the losses, but shows y'all the amount of Russian forces present in the area. Here's a clip of an entire battalion tactical group moving out as one giant convoy. From what we can tell, this looks like, and if I try and show y'all this looks like it's somewhere up in this area here. But we can't really tell for certain. There wasn't enough identifying footage and, well, not really enough identifying landmarks in the footage for us to exactly geolocate this, but this was in the area of Krasnoarivka. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 main battle tanks right there on the road. And then we have 7. So this is pretty much the entire battalion tactical group's tank force right here on the road, waiting for the rest of the column to come up with them. And then let's try and count all of the armored personnel carriers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's an 18th one out there somewhere. We counted around 18, maybe 19 armored personnel carriers on screen and around 7 main battle tanks. As far as this goes, vehicularly, this is an entire battalion tactical group that you just saw on screen. Now, why is that crazy? Usually, a battalion tactical group is spread out over a pretty wide area, maybe about 2 miles at its greatest width. And we just saw the entire unit of 800 soldiers, 10 main battle tanks just about, and around 30 armored personnel carriers in an ideal battalion tactical group on one road, driving one direction, all in a line. Y'all can get an idea off of that, where all the losses came from today. It all came from stupid stuff like this. Why aren't they spread out? Why aren't they doing what they would really do in a war? Who knows? Maybe it's just straight up stupidity, and I'm counting on that. But I gotta say, it's something to see an entire battalion tactical group on the move. In the middle of the battlefield. This isn't behind the battlefield. They're getting shelled right now as they're on the move. And you can see another little mortar round land right down there near the road. That's insane! This is just stupid. This is actually seriously stupid on the part of the Russians. Because on the battlefield, spacing is a very important thing, especially with all of your vehicles. Vehicles are very expensive, and for the Russians, they're practically impossible, if not very difficult to replace en masse. And so putting all of them on one road, where you can literally see them all and just wipe them out, makes no sense. And there's 2 reasons as to why this is happening right now. One, they started this offensive in the Rasputitsa. The Rasputitsa is beginning. This dirt road they're driving down is going to be undrivable by the time the last APC comes off of it. So that's why they're all on the one road, is because they're trying to see if they can avoid the entire battalion tactical group getting bogged down in one spot in the mud. The second reason why is because at this point, According to British Ministry of Defense reports and OSINT reports, it appears that the Russians' level of training for your average soldiers has become so low and so poor that proper spacing could never be ensured on the battlefield at this point in an offensive operation. So what they're doing is they're just sending the entire unit as one giant unit straight at the Ukrainians, and they're hoping that they'll make a breakthrough somehow. The losses are going to be significantly high trying to conduct some form of warfare like that. But the Russians, of course, don't care. They're just looking for results. So no matter the losses, as long as there is some kind of a progress, that's all they're looking for, at least for the generals that are concerned in this. And so with that,
the Russians were thinking, oh, Bliat, if we send them all in at once and we make it look intimidating, the Ukrainians will just run off of Bliat.
Man, they thought as the tanks started moving up, you'd hear that Star Wars music that goes, boom, bum-a-dum, bum, and then the Ukrainians go, oh, we need to run! They thought it was going to be a movie or something, but it didn't turn out to be a movie. Well, actually, it did turn out.
The Ukrainians are sitting there thinking, oh, man, look, it's like 1,000 targets coming up at once. It's going to be like a duck shoot.
Yeah, it did become a movie like that, though, because the Ukrainians slaughtered this entire unit. They also slaughtered many other units. Of course, we saw losses equivalent to 3 battalion tactical groups today. But here is some of the first losses that we saw on film today. And this wasn't actually a part of the battalion tactical group. This appears to have been a lone APC moving through a field and gets hit by some kind of an ATGM, and it's out immediately. We can see that the top is also popped open, and there's literally just guys just pouring out of the open hole at the top of the APC. APC comes
Man, it's like orc in a can, like, the automatic can opener just got sent in. Man, this is like that thing where you pop it open and it starts shooting out confetti or something. That's what this is. But sad. And moving on to the next clip, so I'm starting to stutter over myself because I can't even put into words how stupid this was today. I mean, this is stupider than the Soviet Union in World War II with some of the doctrines that they exercised due to a lack of any experienced officers from the Great Purge. We haven't seen stuff like this ever. Like, really ever. Like, this is something you would see literally laid out in a movie from someone who doesn't know how actual wars are fought. But moving on into the next clip, here's some pictures of the remains of the Russian forces that were left in the field after today's failed assault. This picture comes from the Luftwaffe, but we can't really see much of it. But we can see a large column of Russian vehicles, and these were just left abandoned. We don't even think these were hit. It's just that apparently things were going so badly, the crews just hopped up and ran away. So they're left abandoned in the field. We can see what appears to be a T-72 with a cope cage also burning. It was destroyed, of course. In the next clip, we can also see 3 BMPs, one of them burning in the middle, and the other 2 appear to have been abandoned by their crews, either due to some kind of damage that didn't cause a fire, or they saw the middle vehicle get hit, and then they just abandoned anyways. So, of course, the losses are building up. And then in the last picture, we can see on a screen of a computer, it appears that they're showing a recording, another burning out APC, another destroyed APC with smoke coming off of it, another one that may have been hit and damaged or just abandoned, and then over there in the tree line we can see another abandoned armored personnel carrier. And so let's go through and let's count them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. In these 4 pictures, we've already seen 17 of the 125 Russian armored vehicles that were lost today on the front lines, either by abandonment or by destruction from the Ukrainian army. That's just this one lot of pictures, though. We have a lot more to cover. Like, we have loads of these little clips from the area around Krasnoarivka. Moving on into the next one, we also got to see a Russian tank run over a Ukrainian landmine. And we're going to be muting that because that sounds like some kind of a... And it sounds like we're about to go to the Home Depot. But here is the tank. We can't really tell what kind it is. It kind of looks like a T-80 a little. But it doesn't matter because it evaporates literally in a split second. The tank is gone. We now see it cooking. It's pizza! Come on! And also there's another destroyed tank over there. So, let's see. 17, 18, 19. Now we've seen 19 destroyed Russian armored vehicles. And that's the end of that clip, but now we've seen 19 of them on film. All of these are from today. This is an amalgamation of clips from yesterday and today.
all of the losses you're seeing right now come from today. Moving on from that clip and into the next one, we also got to see another Russian tank hit by a mine, I believe. Let me make sure this is a different clip. It is a different clip. What do you know? This is number 20. Well, actually, 21, 22, 23. This will be tank number, well, armored vehicle number 23 lost today. Let's see what happens. It's driving through the destroyed village, probably of Avdiivka. When you see it coming up to the remains of one destroyed Russian tank. Oh, wait a minute. 20, 24, 25, 26. 26 Russian vehicles destroyed as far as the visual count goes. And of course, this one will join it, so we're already counting that one as number 26. But we can see it driving on past the remains of its fallen brethren. And I guess you could say that while the Russians are looking at their slain brethren and becoming the brethren, the Ukrainians are getting that brethren. You know what I mean? But we can see it hit an anti-tank line. It comes rolling to a stop. The crew abandons the tank immediately. And we got another one.
They know how to do that real well. They can escape a tank within 5 seconds. They're off.
Dude,
and they're no better off running off from the tank. They're just going to run off into the field and, get smacked out there.
Man, American gunnery training, well, tank training for tanks is gunnery, loading, commanding, driving, repairs, everything. Russian tank training is bailing out. Bailing out drills. Get out! And then they just all pop out as quick as they can. Here's the next one, though. Look, that might be number 27. We might get to see, well, wait a minute, that might be number 28. Hang on. We see this tank rolling on up to the area of the last destroyed tank and actually coming to a stop. And we see the BMP behind it rolling up. And what do? Why, they start grouping up. They're smart. Very smart. But you know what's even smarter? The Ukrainians. Because that might be lucky number 27 right there, that main battle tank. We can actually see it's kind of trying to turn around, apparently. And it's actually doing a 180, and it's going to retreat off the field. Magical. Absolutely stupendous. Don't know why the BMP isn't picking up the crews, if that's what that tank is doing. But hey, number 27, well, number 26 has been lost on film, and a main battle tank and a BMP appear to be, at the end of these clips, disengaging from the area due to the loss of the lead vehicle. So we'll count that as... Well, we're not going to count those as losses, but now we've seen two tanks withdraw from the field due to the losses. So we're currently on number 26. Let's go to our last clip, and let's take a look at these APCs that have been hit. 27, 28, this will be number 29. So out of all of the losses today, we have been able to confirm just on the clips we have, and they're not all of the clips, at least 30 armored personnel carriers and tanks lost in this area. We can now see the APC rolling up into the tree line, and we can see that these APCs just got hit by some kind of artillery. And we see, wait, hang on, they're dismounting. The infantry are dismounting from the APC. Dude, that BMP almost sideswiped the guy. Look at this. This guy,
that's what I was about to say. I almost ran him over.
Man, insurance in Russia is non-existent. Good luck. But we can see the APC now turning around. And you know what they do? Oh, you know something? We drove to the tree line right here. You can see where we drove through the field. Very safe, no mines. You know what we're going to do? We're going to pick a whole new path through the field that we have no ideas what's out there. We're going to give it a shot, Blit. It's going to be great. So we can see the APC rolling on out, leaving the infantry in the tree line near the other stricken APCs. There it goes, Blit. Oh!
You got it. Oh, my goodness.
Oh man, dude!
Well,
the
he
guys
didn't get run over by the tire, but he did get hit with a bomb.
Dude, the guys at the APC were sitting there. Okay, take it easy, take it. They saw the hit and look at him, and then they went, "Fly, Blit!" And they start flooring it out there. They're like, "Don't stick around." Well, that squad got dropped off, and then they got dropped. So that's something. And now we can see them getting hit by the cluster bomb. And we can also see another APC just became the unfortunate recipient of that cluster bomb. So, all in all, now we have seen 30 losses. About 31, I believe. Over all these clips that we just saw. 31 filmed and confirmed losses as of this moment in this area. There were many other clips that I just didn't include because there were so many of them, but they did show different armored units, different losses of the Russian army today, and if y'all want to go find those, they are out there. Go and look around on Twitter and Reddit. I would highly suggest the subreddits Combat Forum and Ukraine War Video Report. They seem to get the most clips from Ukraine out of everyone, and they show a lot of losses that I wasn't even able to show on stream tonight. But unbelievable to see the kind of losses in the area of Krasnoyarivka just on film, and then to know that the Ukrainians have reported a number pretty higher than that, really. I mean, way higher than that. And so we will be looking for that information as we get it, but moving on from trying to confirm information about what's going on in the battlefield, let's go and see what the front line has looked like over the past 24 hours in that area. And so let me refresh that. And let's see here. So we can see the Ukrainians are falling back still. It appears that they've given up about a half of a field and nearly a full field. But you have to remember, the Russians have lost about 100 armored vehicles in the area of Krasnoyarivka today just to move forward about half a field, maybe. That's it. They lost that much to make this little progress. If they were to lose that many armored vehicles a day to attempt to encircle Avdiivka, the Russian army would be using Ladas entirely, even as tanks, by the time they encircled Avdiivka. The Russian army would cease to exist with these kinds of losses if they were to continue on with the war this way. And so, gotta be honest with y'all, not really looking good for him, and I would assume that this offensive will probably roll to a stop if the losses continue to be that high. Another thing that's failing this offensive before it even begins is the time of year that the Russians have picked for the offensive to start. Krasnoyarivka is in the middle of a Rasputitsa. Avdiivka is also in the middle of a Rasputitsa. The Donetsk front line is in the middle of a Rasputitsa. The whole entire southeastern area of Ukraine is in the middle of a Rasputitsa. Ukraine is in the middle of a Rasputitsa. And most importantly, Eastern Europe is in the middle of a Rasputitsa. That's a little important, because Russian vehicles, and really anyone's vehicles, can operate off-road during these kinds of weather conditions, and it's starting to set in now. We've seen video footage yesterday confirming that the Rasputitsa is becoming a thing, and now we're seeing that the Russians start an offensive literally on the day the Rasputitsa has actually started. This means their offensive was already dead before it began, because their armored vehicles are not going to be able to fan out and move forward in any kind of a formation, because once they move off-road, they're going to get bogged down. It's going to make them an easy target for the Ukrainian artillery and anti-tank weaponry. They would get slaughtered. On top of that, the Russian army's training at this point is incredibly low. There isn't really that many experienced soldiers left. There's not really a lot of contract soldiers either. And also, the massive influx of volunteers that they have received, they have trained poorly and introduced into the front lines nearly immediately just to try and do a little bit to stop the losses from just bleeding the Russian army dry. So off of all of these things, you can get a good picture that this offensive is doomed to fail from the beginning. And the Ukrainians appear to be just wiping these people out. From what we can understand, the kill-to-death ratio has to be incredibly high for the Ukrainian army at this point, because the amount of armored vehicles that they have destroyed today, there is no way that the Ukrainians are even getting close to taking those kinds of losses in that area, considering most of what we saw hitting the Russian forces was artillery and anti-tank guided missile systems. We rarely ever saw any tank action today in the area at all. And so going off of that, the Ukrainians may have taken very minimal losses as far as their equipment. Maybe an armored personnel carrier, maybe 2 or 3, but I couldn't really see any losses beyond that, just based off of the Ukrainians' weaponry that was used today. But as you can see, the offensive at Avdiivka is grinding to a halt as soon as it started, and it's probably not going to be picking up anytime soon either. And so we're going to be moving on out of the failed Russian offensive at Avdiivka and why it went so poorly, and we're now going to be moving on up into our location. Well, hang on, actually, I forgot to mention this. Let me go to Russia real quick. Because many of y'all know that we used to talk a lot about partisan activity here on this channel. We've actually cut that down a little bit because it seemed like many people didn't really care to see a Molotov cocktail being thrown into a railroad signal box. And I gotta admit, it is kind of boring to watch that stuff. But it's very important for the Ukrainian war effort that partisans continue to do mundane and boring looking things like that. Because today, a publicized report was made by the Russian Railroad Administration. And let me go pull up that company real quick. I believe it's a nationalized railroad company. And according to the National Railroad Company, the Green Wedge Partisan group claim to have evidence that Russian railways are asking for 300 billion rubles, which is equivalent to $3 billion US from the Russian government in order to repair damage done by radical groups supporting the Ukraine regime.
Dang, what kind of damage have they done? I haven't seen $3 billion worth of damage in any of the videos.
Well, it adds up after a while. They destroy signal boxes here. They destroy a switching box there. They blow up railroad tracks. And we've seen a decent amount of trains derail as well, probably damaging their suspension systems and bogies. Who knows? But it is probably totaled up to an incredibly high amount of damage monetarily.
I have a feeling that a good part of that 300 billion rubles is probably like mental damages for the owners of the railway. Like it's gonna go right to their pocket. Like, oh, I'm so hurt from this damage, bleed my brain. Please compensate me, government, please.
Man, the Russian guy who runs the railroad company, he's going to be going, boo, choo-choo, and then take the money. He's going to be doing that or something. But $3 billion of damages caused to the railroad. I mean, hell, CSX can't even top that. I mean, like that, and that's something. So I gotta say, huge credit to the partisans that are inside of Russia, maybe even Slava Free something, who may be here with us tonight, that are damaging the railroad so extensively that they are publicizing $3 billion of damage. Of course, that may not be exactly representative. Everyone knows that the Russian government and everyone in Russia usually tries to scam one another in some way or another. And so this may be, as Enforcer Matt has called it, a graft, which is what British
Grifting.
British people call it when you're hard at work. They go, "Oh, I'm on that graft." And then people in America sit there and go, "Why are they scamming people?" But anyways, still absolutely amazing to see these kinds of monetary losses inside of Russia, and hopefully this is greatly helping out the Ukrainians in their war effort. But Matthew, what do you have to say about that?
I didn't have anything to say.
Oh, I heard you make a small noise, and I was like, "Oh man, I just overtalked him again." But with that, we're going to be moving on from Russia. But really quickly, everyone, I have to remind y'all that while the Russians have lost about $3 billion, according to their public statements, in damages, you always have to remember, y'all, there's Norfolk Southern. That's it. So with that, we're going to be moving on. And also, any of y'all who are into railroad stuff, you'll know what I mean. But moving on from that, and on down into the area of the location unknowns, it's time for us to move on into some very interesting clips today. We don't have many of them. We only have 3, and we've already covered the Cashew report earlier on, so we'll just be skipping past that in the location unknowns. If you didn't see it, though, and you've just joined us, go down into the link in the description below, click on the Day 595 map. It'll take you directly to the map, and you can go check out everything that we have on the map on your own. And some of y'all may be asking, where does this map come from? And I don't mean to brag, but I put this together every single day before the stream. I go through and try and geolocate all of these clips as best as possible. If they show Ukrainian forces, I'll be entirely honest with y'all, those aren't geolocated. We just kind of put them into the general area because we don't want to violate Ukrainian operational security and end up getting people killed. So we just kind of throw those around. But if you see a Russian clip, it's usually very close to where it actually is on the front line. So that's why it largely takes a massive amount of time before stream to get this done, because I go through and hand geolocate each clip the best I can. And then sometimes they just don't get geolocated, and then they're put down on the front line where they most likely would be, and then sometimes somehow they're accurate. Sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. But anyways, just letting a little PSA out there about the map. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into our location unknowns. But Matthew, so many people have been talking about what's been going on in Israel and Ukraine. What are they saying?
So there's been a lot of people talking tonight, like really fast chat. I haven't checked the stats, but it is rolling fast tonight. And also, we have hit 2.1 thousand likes already in the first about 46 minutes or so of the stream. So big thanks to you for hitting that like button as well. And damn, son, where'd you find these likes? Well, we found them right here in the LSA. And we also found some polls right here in the LSA as well. And the first one says, and first off, I hate whatever YouTube has done to this chat box. It is screwing me up really bad tonight. I keep pressing the chat box to like scroll back up to catch something, and it keeps clicking and like clicking on the chat. I don't know what's going on with that, but YouTube, please fix that.
But moving on to our first poll, it says, what is Russia's strategy in Avdiivka? That is a question that many people are asking. 46% said one mass overwhelming push. 29% said wear down the Ukrainians. 15% said it's a combo of both. And 9% said unsure. And, it's really hard to tell exactly what Russia's strategy is because they really don't ever have one. But if you had to take a stab at it, I would say that it seems like they're hoping to do one mass overwhelming push. Now, because wearing down the Ukrainians isn't really working that well because they're sending these people in like meat in a meat grinder. And that really isn't wearing anyone down but the Russians. So I think they're hoping to overwhelm the Ukrainians. But then again, you can send in 1,000 poorly trained soldiers. And then you can have the Ukrainians with just a smaller amount of really well-trained soldiers. And that still is an advantage to the Ukrainians because the Russians being so untrained, they're just not on the same level. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's clear and very obvious to me. And of course, people can disagree, but it's clear and very obvious that the Russians are using human wave tactics at this point. And we haven't seen the Russian army operate offensively really for a long time when you think about it, man, because Wagner was the one who was conducting the offensive at Bakhmut. And there were no real offensives going on outside of Bakhmut for us to see what the Russian army had turned into at that time, at least in offensive doctrine and how they were able to execute that. So the last time we've ever seen the full-on Russian army, the regular army, conducting an offensive inside of Ukraine probably was more than a year ago at this point, at least. Now we're seeing how bad off the Russian army has become in about that year's time since the last time they actually conducted an offensive. They have lost all ability to have any cohesion in the field and to conduct a successful offensive. They're just taking the entire unit, the entire basic level battalion tactical group, 800 guys, 10 tanks, and 30 armored personnel carriers for each battalion tactical group, and they're just sending them straight into the Ukrainians. And it's not working from what we can tell. They are taking heavy losses and getting almost no ground in return for it. So based off of all of that, I would have to say it's going very poorly for them, of course, and I don't think it's going to be changing anytime soon. And this also lets us know that once this offensive fails, while this doesn't bar the Russians from conducting another failed offensive, we know for certain at this point that they'll never be able to really take any meaningful amounts of ground because the Russian army just doesn't have the ability within itself to do anything like that anymore. And especially to maneuver out in the open countryside. Bakhmut was even a little bit different than most battles, because at least in the Wagner's defense, they were able to fight in smaller enclosed areas that were more beneficial to infantry fighting than combined arms fighting out in the countryside surrounding the major towns. That at least was something that the Wagner had going for it at the time, and that's probably why they were able to, over 8 months, take a town that was only home to 70,000 people and really had no strategic value beyond that. But now, the Russian army doesn't have that at all in the area of Avdiivka. They're having to fight through the open fields near Krasnoarivka behind Avdiivka, and they are clearly showing a complete lack of understanding on how to fight a combined arms war. They're either sending entirely tanks and APCs towards the front, or they're sending infantry only. And it's showing that they're not integrating the two or trying to make sure that both of them work with each other to get the best results. None of that's happening right now, so it's an absolute disaster from what I'm seeing. So I'd have to agree with the majority of y'all. And so with that,
I'm beginning to think that Putin is putting so much pressure on the generals, like Shoigu, because I recall a while back, Putin had put some kind of pretty steadfast deadline on taking back some areas inside of Ukraine by the Russian military. And with this Rasputitsa coming up, and it's going to become very hard to move vehicles and soldiers around. It seems like maybe the Russian generals are getting so concerned that Putin's going to come down hard on them that they're sending in all the stuff that they really can't afford to sacrifice. Because where are they getting all these vehicles from? Because they are running out of supplies. They're running out of soldiers and vehicles. So, it doesn't make any sense what they're doing here.
I have no idea what they're doing, and I think it has to be some kind of a political pressure inside of Russia that's forcing a general in some area to go, hey, we're going to have to just send them up. Because we know that the Russian generals don't give a damn about the guys in the field. We already know that. That's been shown through the whole war. And so if they have to throw thousands of guys into a pit in the ground 6 feet under to just try and appease Putin, they would do it. And so Shoigu's probably had pressure put on him that we need results. Nothing's happened in Ukraine recently. There's got to be some kind of a victory. Shoigu went down to the general in this area that controls the army group in Donetsk and said, damn it, we need a victory. Avdiivka is the closest thing. Start pushing guys somewhere out there, come up with a plan and send them. And then that general looked at the battlefield and then sat there and drew up some plans and said, okay, these brigades are going to operate this way and do this. Gave that order to the specific brigade in this area, and then that was disseminated further on down the chain and all the way to the battalion tactical groups. And then the commanders of the battalion tactical groups looked at their battalions, saw how poor off they were, and went, with this kind of training, this kind of inexperience, there's no way that we can actually move these guys in actual fighting formations, and also the weather conditions are not conducive to that either. So we're just going to put them in a giant line and just drive them down the road of the Ukrainian forces, because we have to follow orders, otherwise we're going to be put in prison, so let's just send them. I think that's the whole chain of command that happened for the disasters we're seeing right now for the Russian army. But regardless of the actual chain of events, this is an unmitigated disaster. This is as bad as, say, I'm trying to think of a German offensive that went this poorly. This is like Stalingrad, but not even similar to the battle. It's just similar in losses for what they're doing. It's not equivalent to anything, and they're not seeing any real success with massive losses like these. But with that,
you know what Russia should do is Russia should, get ready to send some troops down to the Middle East, since they got the situation in Ukraine under control so well. They ought to expand out into other areas.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like, they could, I'm like...
No, they couldn't. That's the point, man. They don't have enough people in Ukraine to fight. Like, the people they're sending in are so untrained and so poorly equipped, and then they're looking to send people into the Middle East, perhaps, like the rumors are saying. That's just a joke all the way around.
I thought you meant Ukraine could send forces into the Middle East. I was like, maybe. I completely mistook what you were saying. No, the Russians can't send anyone down to the Middle East. Like, people are thinking that the Russians... And now they don't even have infantry that can fight at all. And we're expecting them to send troops into the Middle East. You know what would happen if they went to the Middle East? We would spank them. And speaking of spanking real quick, man, you actually have a video of a Russian commander spanking his soldiers today. And it's right here. I'll get to that real quick because I got to show this to y'all. It's actually kind of funny. And so here it is. You see the commander right here, and he's giving them guys a little bit of a thrashing.
Damn, dude, it's not a spanking, man. That's a beating.
So we see the next guy coming up. He too shall get a thrashing. And he's like, get on the tree, flat. That's, oh my god.
Huh, that's some strange punishment. Was he got a stick or something in his hand?
Yeah, he's got some kind of a rod or a stick or something, and he's absolutely tanning hides right now.
This dude's a little bit creative with the punishment.
Dude, that Russian guy sat there and he said, give him the cat of nine tails, Blade. And then he went, we don't have one. Get me a freaking iron pipe. And then he started hitting him.
The Russians joined this unit, and they're like, oh, Blade, is this a good unit to fight in? And they say, oh, no, the Commander Igor, he spank. What? Wait a minute, what?
Dude, he spank like Papa who got angry, Blade.
They call him Commander Daddy.
Man, they call him Big Papa. I like it when you call me Big Papa. But anyways, yeah. just had to put that out there because, yes, they are spanking soldiers, just like we were kind of joking about. I just had to show you that clip early. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next poll question. It says, as the Israeli war enters the quote-unquote hot phase with Gaza, how high is the risk of major escalation? 55% said the risk is very high. Excuse me, I almost died. 31% said the risk is somewhat high. 10% said the risk is somewhat low. And 4% said the risk is very low. So it does appear that most of you think that the risk is rather high, if not very high. 55% said very high. I would have to agree with the 55%. This seems to be a very volatile situation that seems to still not be de-escalating even to this day. The U.S. is just sent some special forces of the Marine Corps around to the area. They recalled them off an exercise that they were doing somewhere in the Middle East. I'm not sure where it was, but they're now recalled and they're going toward Israel. It looks like we're preparing... Bahrain. But they're heading toward Israel now, and it looks like we're preparing for something to go down. Obviously, we've got two carriers going toward the area. I think one's already there, and one is also on the way. So, obviously, not a good sign. And to see the situation go down and de-escalate, I think that's unlikely. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it does look like it's going to become a regional-wide conflict. Hezbollah isn't really backing off. I mean, they're not really going all in either, but they're not backing off. And that's starting to make the situation very strenuous, because if they don't back off, the Israelis are making it quite clear they are going to start bombing the Iranians at some point. That's going to piss off the Iraqis. So who knows whose side they'll pick. They'll probably pick the side largely against Israel, because Israel will be the one violating their airspace by shooting missiles over them. But then again, Iraq has actually kind of taken a back seat to really everything in the region. They don't really respond to much outside of their own borders, except for, terrorist groups that also were inside of their country for a while. But they haven't really responded that largely. Jordan will probably not respond that massively either, considering it's fairly Western aligned, and probably will just try and lay low and just not really do much of anything. If y'all don't know, the Jordanians are really aligned with the British a great deal. In fact, they're one of the few countries around the world that actually fields Challenger 2 main battle tanks, rather than just the British. That's how aligned they are with the British. So we'll probably see them do nothing. The Saudi Arabians, they haven't really made a lot of statements about this whole ongoing conflict, at least in a hostile or inflammatory way. So we'll probably see that they don't really do anything either. So I could probably see it happening to the Iranians, the Syrians, and the Lebanese. But beyond that, I think it's going to largely be contained, if it spills over from Israel and into other countries, into those nations alone. We've also heard the Israelis threaten the Syrians that they were going to go in and wipe out the Assad regime here in a bit if they don't try and call off the terrorist groups. So they're also threatening the Syrians as well. It doesn't really appear that the Israelis are throwing a lot of heat at the Lebanese, and the reason behind that is because Lebanon is in shambles so badly. There's probably no good reason to even threaten the Lebanese government, because they almost have no control over the country. I'd actually have to highly encourage y'all to go check out a Vice News, and I know that I usually say things massively against Vice News because they're very political, and they are, kind of like Fox and CNN and everyone, but they actually made a very apolitical and interesting documentary about the economic fallout that's happened after the Beirut explosion of 2020 in Lebanon, and what it's led to as economic consequences. The economy has crashed so badly inside of Lebanon that people are having to hold entire banks hostage to demand that the banks release even a small amount of their money. Otherwise, people are not able to withdraw their money at all, and people are starving to death because they're not even able to afford food or withdraw their money to buy any. That's how bad.
Is that legal? Is that legal? Like, if the bank won't give you your money, can you hold it up?
In Lebanon, it's completely legal for the bank to do that. So people are having to conduct vigilante justice, and of course go in there and actually hold people at gunpoint or Molotov point and threaten that they will burn down the bank and kill everyone in it if they don't get at least some of their money. So going off of that, you can see why it wouldn't be worthwhile to threaten the Lebanese government, because everything's out of control inside of Lebanon. And I see a lot of people saying Vice is pretty giant. And I gotta say, largely so, but I have seen that lately they are moving documentary-wise back into a more apolitical field, kind of like they did near the beginning of their history, which they actually also started as Ukraine War News, which was really cool. But beyond that, they are moving back towards being apolitical with their documentaries. So I would actually recommend checking them out for that. But I'm never one to be into politics with my news. Politics is for a whole other thing, not in my news. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our Super Chat questions. We are fresh out of polls for now. So our first Super Chat question goes to Frank the Tank, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Frank, for that support. And he is a tank. He says, you be you and study harder.
And thank you so much, Frank the Tank, for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. You're helping us to keep it ad-free, sponsor-free, and helping us to keep doing what we're doing. And I got to thank you so much for saying to us to be who we are and do what we do. That's something that I've always been behind since the start of the channel. I've never been into the idea of selling out and not being who we are. We are who we are, and I'm never going to back down off of that. Never cower down to people who want me to say things they want to say or do what they want to do. We're never going to do that. We run this channel the way we run it, and I gotta thank you so much once again, Frank the Tank, for appreciating that enough and that you find it worthwhile to support us. Your support helps us to keep this thing rolling the way we do it. We don't run ads, we don't have sponsors,
We are completely different than every other channel on YouTube for that reason. And it's absolutely unbelievable and an absolute blessing that y'all have helped us to make sure that this channel is able to remain that way for so long. And so thank you so much once again, Frank the Tank, for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our second super chat goes to Old Warrior, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Old Warrior, for that support, and also being a longtime channel viewer. And he says, isn't it possible that, since this attack started yesterday, and some of those losses were underreported yesterday, and that they were pretty low yesterday?
And I would say, yeah, that's probably something that may have happened, is that they may be trying to catch up on the reporting, the casualty reporting a little bit. Maybe that's what's happening, but at the same time, we also saw so many confirmed video losses of armored vehicles just today that it may have also been losses that were entirely taken today. That casualty report was also published around 17 to 16 hours ago before stream, so it we're kind of already in the next day of casualty reporting. In fact, by the time the stream ends tonight, the next casualty report may be out already. So going off of that, that may actually be showing what yesterday's losses were kind of looking like, but nevertheless, they were still incredibly high in that area. And from what we can tell, they are quite accurate. And so with that, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I hope I was able to answer that question fairly well about how their casualty reporting is most likely working, because I have a feeling you're probably right, but they're not trying to compensate for getting the report wrong yesterday. It's more so that report kind of is from yesterday for the most part. But it's a weird thing with how they put out the casualty report like that, and also the date that they put on it. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Old Warrior. You are an old guard of this channel, and not only that, a NAFO member as well, a dual citizen of NAFO and the Lee Spring Army. And I gotta say that is absolutely incredible that folks from NAFO continue to watch this channel and support us and help us to keep this thing running. Folks like you, Old Warrior, and Super Bonker 9000, among many other folks who are from NAFO, have always been watching this channel. And I gotta say, it's wonderful to know that NAFO and the Lee Spring Army stand side by side in our goal and mission to help ensure that folks in Ukraine are helped out as best as possible to continue on to victory. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Old Warrior. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on into the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the Ukraine news and then into Israel.
All right, so the final super chat of this segment goes to another channel legend. This time it is the BC Skyman, who puts in a $20 donation and puts in a super sticker of the Shiba Inu, a YouTube dog, in the samurai outfit, holding the #1 sign, waving it back and forth very viciously. And thank you very much, BC, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you, BC Skyman, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Folks like you have made it possible for such a long time to keep this thing rolling. I got to thank you for putting in the Shiba Inu, waving the #1 flag, because it's a high praise. And I thank you so much for awarding us another Shiba Inu. I like to thank all the people at the Academy for making this possible. But moving on from that, thank you so much once again. And I hope that you've been having a fun time watching tonight and helping to keep this thing rolling, because without folks like you, BC Skyman, who've helped to support this channel, we wouldn't be able to keep the thing rolling. And I say that to everyone. And that's also why we go out of our way to thank each and every person, even if the support is only $1. Because one, $1 may mean a lot to that person, and so we want to thank them for supporting. And also, every single one of y'all combined supports this channel where we can keep it running. And beyond that, we wouldn't be able to keep it running. There's no magical ads or sponsors that somehow sustain us in the background and help us to do this as a job, unlike other YouTubers. We do everything through Super Chats, and also really everything goes through the live chat, because Super Chats go through the live chat, and then on Sundays, the donations to the fundraisers are also seen in the live chat as well. The only way the channel runs is pretty much through folks supporting either us through the live chat or supporting the fundraisers through the live chat. And so I gotta say, absolutely incredible, BC Skyman, that you helped to support the channel tonight, and thank you so much once again for being an old guard and helping us to keep the Lee Spring Army flag flying. And with that, we're going to be moving on from the question segment and down into the location unknowns, where we got to see some Ukrainian soldiers standing in a crater. There's the Ukrainian soldier right there.
Oh, what's he doing down there?
Man, he in a hole, man. he in a big hole. But that's a crater that was caused by a Russian missile, an incredibly huge one at that. But still,
Hopefully no one was injured in this, but showing you the absolute destructive scale of some Russian missiles. Moving on from that and into our next location unknown, we also got to see a Ukrainian soldier cooking. We see he's got some mercury up here. And we can see him looking around, and they got a whole kitchen going on here. They cooking up charcuterie up in here. Look at this. I mean, this man be cooking it up good time. You know what I mean?
Man, it looks pretty good. Was it something like sausage on bread or something?
Man, that'd be that sausage with that cheese. And now he's slicing up some tomatoes. Man, this actually looks really good. He's making a whole load of sandwiches. But with that, gotta say, wonderful to see these guys cooking up some good food. And it's once again showing that Ukrainian logistics are incredibly good so far. And also fighting on home territory helps out with good logistics most of the time. Moving on from the location unknowns and on into the Northeastern front, we also saw today that 15 tanks were also knocked out up in this area, around the Kupiansk-Liman area. Here's the clip. 1 Russian tank. Are we going to be mute? 2 Russian tank. 3 Russian tank. 3 Russian tanks right in center of street. 4. Number 4 right there. I guess you could say that is you know, as far as the Ukrainians knocking out these Russian tanks, it's a bit of a favor, and there's 4 of them, so I guess you could say, por favor. Oh, man, that was a cheesy one. But anyways, we can see that tank right there, of course, knocked out as well. That's number 4. And then we can see number 5, further back there. Of course, the Russian losses in this area of the line were incredibly high. And we can also see a Russian soldier down there. It appears that he's working on renovations for the tank. This shows us that the losses of these vehicles was actually quite recent. But there's number 5. There's number 6. 6 tanks lost so far. All today in this area. Number 7 and number 8. Oh, that's a T-90M. One of these was a T-90M because there's a T-90M turret. 10. There's number 10. Abandoned. Dejected. Alone.
What was that from?
I don't know. I don't know. I just came up with that one. But here's number 11. And that looks like some kind of a BMD, perhaps. And
11.
I gotta tell you, it's quite nice. I gotta thank the Academy. But let's see, number 12, maybe. Number 12. Let's see here. Those are the tanks we saw earlier. So far we've seen 12, but I may have miscounted. What the hell is the point of me counting? Y'all know I'm bad at math. But anyways, incredibly high number of Russian tank losses. Actually, there's number 12, 13, and 4. Oh, wait a minute. 14, yeah. 14 and 15 right there. So there we have it. There's all 15 of the losses. Impressive to see. Wonderful to know that the Russians are losing such a high number of armor in the northeastern area of the battlefield. Moving on from that and down into the Kremena Forest, we also got to see the Atom Group in action in this area right here. Oh, I don't know what that was, but it sounds like someone's passing gas. Well, you see the drone drop the bomblet, and when you see that Russian soldier has been, toasted. Someone called us a Mitsubishi because they got a toaster. But we can see them dropping another bomblet. That one fell right in the middle of the trench, and it appears that they were up in a flash. And Bruce Lee said, "Bad at maths." Yes, but I don't do math, so I'm probably pretty bad at it. But we can see the Russian trench getting hit quite profusely here. Serendipitously. We can see some more Russians.
And also, real quick, folks, on the poll, you can only bring it into 1. That's the part that makes the poll tricky. You can't pick all 3, otherwise there'd be no point to the poll.
And everyone's believing that LSA phrase, you can have the cake and eat it. They're like, let's take them all out. It's like, yeah, it's like, do it. We can see some Russians down here. It appears that he is trying to get involved in some exercises. We can also see another guy over here. He also appears to be trying to do a plank, but he's not really doing the plank well. The form's not right.
I guess you could say the Russian military is eating the cake, but they can't have it.
Man, they're doing more than eating cake. They're getting cake. You know what I mean? I don't know what we call these little gifts that they're dropping right here, but I call it cake. We can see that Russian soldier right there had a little bit too much cake, and now he's having to crawl around. But we see them dropping another bomblet, and the Atom group is just going to town. I mean, it's honestly absolutely nuts to see how they'll just go out and, you know, take care of infantry groups so well. I mean, it's like catering nearly. The Atom group catering by drone. It's impressive stuff. We can see a Russian actually laying out right there. It looks like he's just kind of, you know, enjoying the shade in the trench. Of course, it's kind of a little hot out. It is late fall, after all. It's known as a hot time of year. And we can see them drop a bomblet in the area. And it appears that it may have helped them to, you know, cool down a little.
You know, I wonder if the Russians wanted cake, if they could even get it. Like, they'd have to go ask that you know, Commander Spanky if they wanted cake. And I don't know if you'd want to ask him about that.
Man, you sit there and go, Commander, he goes, yes, son. Can I have cake? Pull your pants down. No,
whoa.
No,
Whoa,
Papa.
whoa.
And he pulls out the giant lead rod. Go over there and hold onto that tree. Don't do it to me, Papa. It's too late.
Man, this
now.
sounds so wrong. Like, this out of context is so wrong.
But anyways, hey, look, it's okay. It's okay. It's not like anyone's going to use our words against us in some way that it clearly wasn't meant. But we can see the bomblets blowing up in the trenches. We see one Russian coming out to investigate. And we see him go, well, he's apparently investigated too well, because he's like, oh, bleh, and he went back to his little hideout right there.
Oh, bliat.
I said, I don't like where the story's going. Yeah, we both saw the same thing. But that's the end of the video from the Atom group. Gotta say, they did a pretty damn good job. Pretty impressed with them, and great to see the Atom group, of course, making sure to eventually push the Russians out of the land. And Carl Farmer said, that sounds disturbing. And yeah, it didn't mean to come out that way, but it did. But with that, we're moving on from that and into our next clip, where we saw the Ukrainian forces striking a building. This was done by an airborne brigade, and we can see all the Russians down there, and the airborne brigade's trying to figure out how to make them airborne. We're about to see it happen. Call this airborne group the Make-A-Wish Foundation, because the Russians' wishes to fly will come true any minute now. Well, you see them all
man. Call Ukrainians DARPA. They're making stuff fly that shouldn't fly.
Man, call this thing Northrop Grumman, because you're not even going to see these people. They're just going to be flying. But when you see the artillery hit them,
They always asked you as a kid, can pigs fly? No. Well, yeah. Look what we're looking at right here. I mean, do you see this, man?
Man, I think they just made the whole house fly right there. I don't think that was just a pig flying. Look at this. Oh my lord! Yeah, they all
the pig pen went up too.
Man, Dorothy's going off to the Wizard of Oz right now with that explosion. The house is gone. But that is nuts. They hit an ammo depot in that thing. Pretty impressive, to say the least. That's the end of the clip right there. Absolutely wonderful to see. And we're going to be moving on from that and into our next clip near Opitne, where we saw the Russians hide, but not too well. Would you like to see them try and hide, but not too well? Well, regardless whether you want to see it or not, you're going to see it. I don't mean to force it on y'all or anything, but we have to show it. But we see this is from the Wild Division. And look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hiding behind destroyed MTLB. Very good job. But they did not hide well. Not well enough, at least. And we can all
now, if they all just grabbed a part of this thing and like picked it up and started walking off with it, I'd laugh my head off.
That would be funny. But I think they're going to have little parts of them on the APC in a minute. It's going to be the other way around. And the APCs are going to walk off with them. But we see the kamikaze drone fly over a destroyed armored car. We can see the Russians still hanging out there on the side of the MTLB. And, uh-oh. This
the
man,
hell, they're slow as hell. Look at them.
situational awareness with this man is down to 0. And when you see the FPV drone trying to go for the lot of them.
That one dude said, I'm not moving.
And it looks like he may have made a smart move right there. Whoa.
Oh, no, he got blasted.
No, man. Call it paprika because he got salted and peppered. But moving on from that, we're seeing that the Russians' hiding attempts aren't really doing that well. But that's all the footage we got from Bakhmut. The front line really didn't change too much there. Moving on down to the southern front, we also saw near Volodar no frontline movements, but some interesting action. We saw that the Ukrainians were able to single out and destroy a TOS thermobaric system in this area around Stepney today. Here's the clip. We're going to mute that, but we can see the TOS firing off its thermobarics. It appears that the Russians are still using the TOS, but hardly compared to what it was once used at the beginning of the war. We now see it driving up to a shed, and apparently this is the shed of choice. And we can also see the exhaust fumes coming from another tank inside the shed. Oh, by golly.
Oh.
Or as we used to say...
He's a little visible.
Or as we used to say, Matthew, oh my.
Oh my, this tank's going right into a target. Oh my.
And as in the words of John Mellencamp, Matthew, easy targets. We can see the artillery slamming right down onto the roof, right where the vehicles are stored.
Is that like a service station or something? They pulled in like they're getting the car fixed on or something.
Hey, fill her up! But yeah, maybe it is a service station.
Hey, Jack, what's wrong with your car? I pulled it on in, Bugsy.
Dude, I wish we could tell that story. We're not going to tell that one, though, I don't think.
Oh, look at him go. The mechanic left, he's off duty.
Dude, he had the Scooby-Doo noises flying as he was around. He was going... But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see the 72nd Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces also destroy a 152mm artillery piece today, which is called a Gyansen S. We can already see a fire is broken out in front of the artillery piece. I think that's actually a campfire. Wow. Stupid Russians and their stupid tricks. Look, they were like, it's cold. Let's set campfire. Set giant bonfire, pretty much signaling their presence to everyone. And then the drone comes in and hits the Gyansen. How stupid can you get? You know, people always say that the American public education system has failed us as a society. I would have to disagree. It is the Russians who have failed the world with their stupidity. I've never seen anyone get this stupid yet, but of course, I will still be surprised even then. Nevertheless, Gyansen S destroyed. Russians cry. Cope. Moving on from that, we can also see an M270 HIMARS firing at the Russians from a distance. Actually, I think this is a Mars, but nevertheless, the same thing, potato, potato. It's firing off HIMARS rockets. Here's the clip. Not really an Iron Dome, but still, it's one hell of a system, and a whopper.
This is the great value Iron Dome. So beautiful, it's like SpaceX.
And with that is end of clip, but very nice to see their little HIMARS in action in the distance. Moving on from that and down into the area of Roboltne. We haven't seen a lot of frontline movement here. I'll show you all the map just to confirm that. As y'all can see, no frontline movement as of today. It appears that the Ukrainian offensive has slowed down a good bit, but we did see the inside of a Leopard 2 as they were fighting against the Ruski. Now, I'm Gift Bearer, you're right. It kind of does look like an Iron Dome when it's firing, but still it doesn't have those little agile missiles that the Iron Dome has that can do like 180s in flight. So it's not as like impressive to me to watch because the Iron Dome is like watching a fireworks show. Watching the HIMARS fire is just kind of like, you know, a normal missile system, but still a very deadly one. But here's the inside of the Leopard. And this appears to be from the position of the loader.
Whoa! They snuck that in there.
Man, they put in that Chad music. They said there, I'm gonna make you pump like that. Boom, boom, boom. I was like, what the hell's wrong with these people? But when you see them loading the next shell, the gun's now ready to fire again. And it looks like they got a target. Oh, they did have a target. And they got it. Very nice. Man.
You know something when that Chad music, came on? Do you remember back in the day when LimeWire was still around and stuff like that? Like the file thing where music would be on? You could download it?
I never heard of it, but I think I have a
Oh,
little bit.
Everybody else knows about LimeWire. And every time you'd like click on like one of those like pirated songs or whatever from like back in the day, they would have those tags on there like I'm always doing all the time, like real trap shit, trapaholics. Damn, son, where'd you find this? And nobody ever found out who the dude was. Like they've never found it out. But that's what they were missing in that song a second ago. They needed some tags like from LimeWire.
Man, I'll tell you something else though. You know, one that I find funny, Matthew, and you know which one it's about to be. Shadow Wizard Money Gang. We love casting spells.
Oh yeah.
This song is brought to you by the Shadow Government. But I love that one. That one's funny to me. And also, there's a whole bunch of other ones. There's one that's kind of along the lines of, get shake my lightning, but I'm not even going to try and say that one on stream, because that one's a little too much. But still, it's funny how the guy would read them off, because it was so passionate. All of the stuff he was saying was so stupid. It's like, yeah, honestly, you got to get behind the guy's enthusiasm a little bit just on that alone, because you're like, damn, this guy is just belting this out. But anyways, moving on to our next clip, we got to see some Russians captured in the area around Novoprokopivka. And Commander Kovic said, you don't know LimeWire? I mean, is it a wire that looks lime? Don't hurt me, man. But anyways.
Man, you'd remember LimeWire if you had it, because it would wreck your computer eventually.
Man, they got 3 of them. This guy's literally twiddling his thumbs down here. That's the Russian army in a nutshell.
Так замотали, влаштували медичний огляд. Звідки ти, чума?
71-й.
Що 71-й?
Мотострелковый полк.
Ты тоже с него?
Да.
Вы все с него?
Да.
Тебе что, плохо? А что ты такой молодой?
Мне 19 лет.
А что ты тут забыл?
Мне деньги нужны.
Зачем
And they're
тебе
kind of
деньги?
quiet.
Маме на лечение.
А отец твой где?
Погиб.
На войне?
Да.
И ты решил по его стопам пойти?
Мне деньги нужны маме на лечение.
Что, государство не помогает?
Не хватает.
А что, за папку не выплатили?
Мы ходили, документы собрали. Сказали, не выплатят.
I never realized how sad this group of people are.
Такие вот дела.
I'm staying in the LSA. Thank you. I thank you for that. I thank you for appreciating this community. It's an amazing community, I'll tell you that. But with that, very nice to see some Russian prisoners captured. Wonderful to see. And with that, we're going to be moving on.
That's basically a kid, by the way. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he pretty much is. But you know how it is. You know, the Russians are a little desperate for manpower. You know, the age limitations are looked over every once in a while. You know, it's not a common thing, I'm sure of, but still feel sorry for them. And it's good that they surrendered, because in all seriousness, it would be terrible to know that a kid, probably with a huge future ahead of him and a long life, would end up dying in a war that nobody even cares if he died or not in. But moving on from that and into our last clip, we also saw a burning Russian tank in the area of Novoprokopivka as well today. That's the Chad music I'm talking about. But anyways, we can see the Russian tank get hit down there. We can see a honey badger at the bottom of the screen. And we see the Ukrainians coming out with a drone.
This honey badger, like, it doesn't even look mad. It just looks like it's afflicted with some kind of disease or something.
Man, this is the kind of
it's
honey
like
badger
permanently,
that
like
drinks...
his mouth's like permanently like fixed like that. Like, I'm not trying to be mad, but I kind of am.
Man, this is the kind of honey badger that drinks 4 Loko at 3 in the morning. And that's the honey badger that does that, man. But we see the drone dropping its thermobaric in the tank.
And then when it finally gets mad, it goes, rawr.
That's it. Then it burns like the tank. Oh my lord. Oh man, we crack ourselves up. Oh goodness gracious, heavens. But still, wonderful to see another tank being destroyed. I gotta say, great to see. Moving on from that, and on out of the area of Robotny, we're now moving on down to Sevastopol for the cream of the crop. Project 22-160 may have been knocked out today, from what we know. According to the information we've gotten, the Pavel Derzhavin, which is a Project 22-160 patrol vessel, may have stricken a Russian mine today right outside of the port of Sevastopol and immediately had to be dragged back into the port so that way it could undergo repairs at one of the few open dry docks. I think it's the only open dry dock that was left. So now that dry dock's occupied, this ship may be damaged to the point it will not be usable for the rest of the war. another one bites the dust. And of course, we're just saying that right now. We don't have actual picture proof of its damage, so we'll have to wait for that, but that's the story that's out right now. Moving on from Ukraine, y'all thought it was over, didn't you? Y'all thought we were going to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Zelenskyy. No, 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 no. This is part 2. We're now moving down to Israel, because Israel is real. See what I did there? But anyways, moving on into the U.S. response to what's going on in Israel, we've heard that we're taking an LHD from the area around Bahrain, and we're going to be moving it into the Eastern Mediterranean to join everyone else over there. The Bataan Amphibious Ready Group, consisting of the USS Bataan, pictured here, the USS Cardinal Hall, and also roughly 3,000 Marines from the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit, are now off the coast of Bahrain and heading in the direction of the Arabian Sea, after they were forced to wrap up an exercise in Kuwait early in order to prepare for further tasking as a result of emerging events, meaning they're going to the Eastern Mediterranean because of Israel. So it's great to see that more forces will be joining the Gerald R. Ford in the Eastern Mediterranean, and hopefully things will be going where we do not have to get involved. Beyond that, however, Netanyahu has also declared that they are now on the offensive. Israel is getting real, and they're now on the offensive, and they're intending to crush the Hamas where they are, inside the Gaza Strip. According to a statement, a direct quote from Netanyahu, "We are now on the offensive. Every Hamas terrorist will die. Hamas is ISIS. We will crush them like the world crushed ISIS." I gotta say, some very strong words, but very well deserved, and hopefully we'll see that they are able to finally dismantle the Hamas terrorist group and bring control and order back into southern Israel. Meanwhile, the Israelis have created a security perimeter around the area of the Gaza Strip, otherwise known as a military administrative zone. This zone spans a large part of southern Israel, all the way from just the southern suburbs of Ashkelon over to the area of Shalva, and then down towards Rahat, and then towards Nave, down here near the border. This entire area that's within that circle, heading towards Gaza, is now under the direct control of the Israeli Defense Forces, and martial law has been declared in this area. Israelis are being evacuated from every single village if there are still people there, and the Israeli Defense Forces are also still fighting Hamas terrorists within that area. Hamas continues to cross the Gaza border through some of the openings, and some quick reaction forces have actually made it all the way to the Gaza border wall, and are still trying to fill in the breaches that were created days ago that the Hamas continues to pour through. Meanwhile, at that exact same time, the fate of the Gaza Strip is currently unknown, and the Israelis actually have 2 options that they are publicly entertaining, according to Global Military Info. The first option is the one that they're not going with right now, but maybe a fallback later if the situation becomes worse. This one involves hard but limited fighting for the Israeli Defense Forces. They would go into the Gaza Strip and largely decimate the Hamas terrorists, but they would leave them where they still exist in the future. They would just largely remove their military capabilities for now. This is an option that the Israelis are also entertaining if Hezbollah joins the war in southern Lebanon against the Israelis up there. That means the Israelis would have to divide up their forces, moving them all over the country for their defense, and so for that reason, they are considering this a fallback option at the moment. The one that we know they're going with right now, which is option number 2, is that the Israeli Defense Forces are going to occupy the Gaza Strip completely and also eradicate Hamas. According to this idea, there's a bit of an issue. Who in the world's going to be controlling Gaza after this is over with, and the Israeli Defense Forces have occupied the Gaza Strip? There are 3 separate options that the Israelis are going with right now. One is that they just occupy the Strip, and it remains under the control of the Israeli Defense Forces, kind of like a sector in the southern United States after the fall of the Confederate States of America in the Civil War, when Edward Stanton, under orders of Abraham Lincoln and then Andrew Johnson, started to divide up the South into military districts, which would remain until the end of Reconstruction around 1877. That may be what we're seeing inside of the Gaza Strip, is that instead of it being a part of Israel, it's a military administrative zone that is under the direct control of martial law enforced by the Israeli Defense Forces. The second option is that they'll rely on the Palestinian authorities to control the Gaza Strip, completely devoid of Hamas being present. This is an option that was kind of given to the Palestinian authorities already, and it appears to have gone poorly, and that's how we saw the Hamas militants even get any kind of governance over the Gaza Strip. The third and final option is a very interesting one. requiring the intervention of the United Nations for the most part to create a cooperative administration in between the Arab countries, Israel, and Palestine that would oversee the operations of the Gaza Strip. And so this is something of an interesting one. I don't really know how that would go, and that would also require a lot of bureaucratic tape to be cut through inside the United Nations for anything like that to happen, but probably one of the most unorthodox and interesting ideas about the future governance of the Gaza Strip is some kind of a joint multinational venture to control the area. We most likely expect that they would just occupy the area and create a military administrative zone within the Gaza Strip. That seems to be the most likely option. However, while all of this higher-end thoughts and ideas are going on, of course with the Prime Minister of Israel and also with the Israeli government trying to figure out what the future of Gaza will be, the war is still going on hot on the ground. We have seen that the Israeli Defense Forces have continued to strike the Gaza Strip. We saw today footage being released from the Israeli Air Force showing their airstrikes against supposed Hamas compounds. And we can see a multitude of those here caught on film. The Israeli Air Force has been airborne ever since this war with Hamas has begun around 4 to 5 days ago. And we can see that they are hitting anything that's believed to be a Hamas site. Even urban areas like this right here. We can also see them hitting kind of close to the border wall, interestingly enough. Probably trying to hit Hamas terrorist crossing points. And we can also see them hitting some vehicles as well. And with that, that's the end of those clips, but once again showing the Israeli Defense Force the Israeli Air Force getting involved in the air war campaign. Meanwhile, further down, interestingly enough, many of y'all may have heard that the power, electricity, and really every single form of modern infrastructure has been cut off to the Gaza Strip. But oddly enough, there is one unknown location inside the Gaza Strip that still has power, and there's a picture of it right there. We haven't really been able to find out what that is or why it has power, but there is one place in the Gaza Strip that still has power somehow, and we're guessing it's maybe coming from generators or something not connected to the grid, but still very, very bizarre. Another thing that was really bizarre today is that the Israelis destroyed a Hamas submarine. I didn't even know
that. Is it like a narco sub or something?
I'm guessing, because I never even knew they had subs, Matthew. But here's a clip from the Israeli Navy claiming that they destroyed a Hamas submarine. And that's it right there, a depth charge of a sort going off. And then we can see them hitting some dinghies. I guess that was the Hamas Navy. And then we can see some kind of an explosion on some kind of a craft. I couldn't really tell what that was. But still, very interesting little developments going on out there at sea near the Gaza Strip. Never knew they had a sub. It's probably not a big sub like Matthew said. It's probably like a narco sub or something. Because there's no way that it's a real legitimate sub. I'm just doubting that massively. But, of course, while all this has been going on, Hamas has still been firing off rockets just at everything inside of Israel, and we've seen the Iron Domes near Ashkelon once again at work just a few hours ago, still shooting down missiles that are flying into Israel and protecting the Israeli citizenry. Here's the clip. And I gotta say, this is why I think that the Iron Dome is just an amazing, impressive system. Just look at all of these missiles, correcting their flight paths as they go to make sure that they can hit these unguided rockets as they're still flying. A really impressive feat of engineering the Iron Dome is.
I still just don't understand why it wouldn't be useful in Kyiv. I think it would still be a helpful thing there.
I mean, it might, but, you know, it's mostly made for smaller things. I mean, Shaheds it probably worked very well against, but cruise missiles and the like, it would be completely ineffective against. But who knows, maybe it would be, because when you think about it, it's like, why wouldn't it be? Even if it's a smaller missile, if it hits a cruise missile, and it actually causes serious damage to it, I would assume that that missile would be screwed at that point regardless, but still, an amazing weapon system, and maybe one day we'll see the Ukrainians get one of these things, but it doesn't appear to be anytime soon. But with that, that's actually, funnily enough, all the news we got out of Israel today. That's why we kind of left it as the rear part of the stream instead of the head-on part, because Ukraine, of course, was the more important and pressing matter tonight, for sure, without question. But with that, it's now time for us to move back up to Ukraine and into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 595 of the war. And really quickly, this is incredibly long. I'm going to be moving through because I believe Zelenskyy was here in the United States today, or he was in a conference with the U.S. generals. Actually, let me check where this really was. Speech Ramstein. This was at Ramstein, whatever you want to call it. But we have gotten to the address from Zelenskyy. Let me see if he's speaking in English. Damn it! Okay, hang on. We got to go get English. Because he was speaking in English and then they dubbed it over in Ukrainian because this is the president of the Ukraine's office website, which is for Ukrainians. So now we have to go and get it in English. So here's the subtitles. I'm sorry I will not be hearing Zelenskyy's voice tonight, but nevertheless, here is the speech.
Багато хороших речей для того, аби захищати свободу. Єнсе, генеральний секретарю, я вдячний вам за вашу віру в Україну, за впевненість, що Україна буде серед союзників у НАТО. Пані та панове, наступний понеділок відзначить 600-й день нашого протистояння російській повномасштабній агресії проти наших людей, проти України. І сьогодні ніхто не може, напевно, сказати, скільки ще днів нам доведеться обороняти нашу незалежність та обороняти нашу ідентичність, але ми уже можемо сказати декілька речей, які, на мою думку, є важливими. Перше – це Путіну не дасться Україна. Друге – Росія не може дозволити собі нову гонку озброєнь. І третє – демократія може перемогти цю битву. І це важливо не лише для нашої країни, а для кожної держави у світі. Наш час – це не час для поневолення держав. Ви усі знаєте, що амбіції Москви ніколи не були обмежені Україною. І ми усі хочемо, щоб ці амбіції були знешкоджені в Україні найближчим часом. І це найкраща можливість. Тому нам не потрібно шукати снаряди і танки для інших держав в Україні, в Азії, в Африці, куди може також намагатися вторгнутися божевільний російський імперець і намагатися перетворити це на свою зону впливу. Я знаю, що НАТО готове захищати свої кордони і своїх членів від зовнішньої агресії. І я не хочу, тим не менше, щоб це було відчутно в реальності. І нам потрібно захищати світ від загрози російської агресії. Я знаю, що необхідно для того, щоб прискорити завершення цієї війни. Дозвольте мені наголосити, прискорити завершення. Це повний захист нашої територіальної цілісності, суверенності і повні гарантії безпеки для України після цієї війни. Зараз у нас дуже особлива ситуація на полі бою. Така ситуація, в якій необхідно давити без жодних пауз. Дуже важливо, щоб не було пауз. Необхідно розуміти принципи ефективної оборони і розуміти, що оборона не має дозволяти противнику зупинятися і відновлюватися, обирати нові тактики. Росія втратила ініціативу на сьогодні, і ми продовжуємо тиснути на неї. Українська відвага та ваша підтримка, саме вони визначають, що відбувається на полі бою і, що найбільш важливо, що буде відбуватися на полі бою. Тим не менше, противники досі намагаються штурмувати наші позиції, незважаючи на нашу оборону, незважаючи на те, що іде наша контрнаступальна операція, усе дуже складно. Але саме наші військовослужбовці визначають хід подій. І Росія не може своїми силами вести цю війну, ви це бачите. Їй потрібен Іран, вона не може справлятися без шахедів. Їй потрібна Північна Корея. Буквально уявіть собі, вперше в історії Москва поїхала до Пхеньяну для того, щоб схилити коліно. І Чорноморський флот Російської Федерації тікає від наших морських дронів, від наших ракет. Традиційні покупці російської зброї бачать, яку перевагу дає зброя, виготовлена вільним світом і яка використовується українцями. Росія повільно, але безумовно відходить із різних ключових точках у геополітичних зламах, тому що їй бракує власної сили. Тим не менше, у той же час у неї все ще вистачає сили для того, щоб розпалювати конфлікти і перетворювати їх на повномасштабні трагедії. Це трапляється у Сахелі, це трапляється в Ізраїлі, це трапляється на Близькому Сході, і ми не можемо дозволити цьому трапитися. Нам потрібно запобігати таких речей, нам потрібно навіть більше давити на противника, щоб він ставав слабшим швидше і не міг адаптуватися до цього тиску. Нам потрібно переконатися, що Росія прямує до поразки, і вона навіть не намагається зробити ще щось, крім цього. Один із найбільш життєво важливих боїв відбувається проти кремлінського ключового механізму. Це збочена гордість Кремля, гордість за тероризм. Минулої зими Росія намагалася перетворити зброю проти нас, наші енергетичні фабрики, і усі нам із цим допомогли. Кожен із вас, кожна країна, кожен лідер із протиповітряною обороною, із енергетикою. Це стало рятівним кругом для нас, для наших людей, для наших дітей. І, безумовно, цієї зими Росія намагатиметься повторити цю тактику. Але із тими висновками, які вона вже винесла, і з більшими терористичними зусиллями. Будь ласка, зважайте, що Ізраїль, і там були терористичні цілі, вони намагалися там влучити у одні із найбільших енергетичних станцій. І минулого року Росія не робила таких атак. Безумовно, нашим завданням зараз, складним завданням, є пройти цей важкий зимовий час. Але насправді це завдання, воно набагато обширніше, ніж просто пройти зиму. Протиповітряна оборона – це значна частина відповіді на питання, коли завершиться ця війна і чи завершиться вона справедливо для України. Я переконаний, що це може так бути і що так буде, тому що кожен бачить, що дає захист неба. Це гарантія того, що у містах буде нормальне життя, що буде економіка, що будуть люди. Протиповітряна оборона великої дальності може забезпечити функціонування наших коридорів у Чорному морі і у регіоні Дунаю. Протиповітряна оборона запевнить, що російські літаки не зможуть досягнути українських кордонів. І таким чином ми також зможемо вирішити проблему російських керованих авіаційних бомб. Отже, зараз нам потрібен крок вперед у нашій протиповітряній обороні. Протиповітряна оборона для України стане перемогою життя, і для Росії стане поразкою. Це буде провал ключової стратегії Росії, стратегії терору. Нам потрібно захищати людей, нам потрібна спроможність нарощувати економічну діяльність, нам потрібен адекватний експорт зерна та ключових продуктів українського зерна. І також ми можемо говорити про металургію. Нам потрібно, щоб діти ходили до шкіл, щоб вони вчилися не лише в онлайні, і люди, щоб наші жили не лише від повітряної тривоги до повітряної тривоги, а за своїми планами, щоб вони могли ці плани будувати на дні, на тижні, на місяці. І коли це трапиться, більшість наших людей, які знайшли тимчасовий прихід,
To be entirely honest with y'all, I cannot stand the translator anymore.
Go.
So I'm gonna be completely honest with y'all. Thank y'all for listening to this much of the speech. If you want to hear more of it, make sure to go check out the link in the description below. Go to Kyiv. Go listen to the speech. It's very nice. And of course, in my new voice,
So moving on from that, Gotta say, respect the translator, but still, it was a little rough. And also, there was this one point, and I kind of get it, because I do it too sometimes, but you never realize how bad things sound until it's someone else doing it. Because she sat there and talked, and she went, anyways, and I was like, oh man, I know what that is, but still, it doesn't sound that good. So sorry, everyone, but that was all of the speech we're going to show from Zelenskyy tonight. But there is much more to go. We have loads of things to talk about with y'all. Loads of things. Endless things. Things you'll love to hear. And things you'll love to ask and have asked. And so, with that, let's get right into it. What we got, Matthew?
Now, I gotta say, that would have been a plot twist if you'd have heard the translator going, excuse me. It like broke out into a man's voice like all of a sudden or something.
Dude, it's like those cartoons back in the day where the baby would be in the crib and it'd be going, goo goo gaga, hey, what's the big idea around here? Or something like that. It's like that.
Right. But anyways, moving on to our polls and questions for our final segment. Our first poll here says, if you could bring an end to one enemy group immediately and completely, which would it be? 47% said the Russian military and Russian PMCs. 28% said North Korea and China's military. 20% said Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran military. And 5% said unsure. And on this one, I gotta say that this is a tough choice because all of them have their own really bad things going on. And I know most of you are going to be inclined to say the Russian military because this is a primarily Ukraine-based channel. So I understand why it's 47% for that. But if we could take just one of them out, I would have to say I'm with the 28%. I think North Korea and China would be the one I'd go with. And their military, that is. Not the country, just the military. And I'll probably go with that one because we can knock out Russia if we have to. We can also knock out Hamas and Hezbollah and also even Iran in the Middle East. But China might be a bit of a pickle. And if we can get North Korea along with them, then there you go. But Enforcer, what say you?
So Russia, not really, big deal in Ukraine, not big deal around the world. China, North Korea, I'd have to agree with Matthew. That's the biggest deal we've got going on right now in the world. That's the biggest rival of the United States. It's the biggest rival of the Western world. And so if we take care of them, we take care of a lot of problems. So I would say that I'd have to agree with the 28% of y'all as well. I would have to go with the Chinese and the North Koreans too, because the last option, it's Hamas and Hezbollah. They're kind of like ISIS. They're kind of around that same group. And I mean, they'll of course grow if you don't pay attention to them, but you can put a little bit of effort their way and they crumble. Look at ISIS. ISIS took almost no effort, really. Well, I'm kind of kidding about that. Really took no effort on our end. It was a monumental effort by everyone in Syria and everyone in Iraq to take care of those people, but for us, it wasn't really that big of a deal. And it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal for us right now because Israel would probably be the one doing the heavy lifting, taking care of Hamas and Hezbollah, while we just kind of sat back and gave a little bit of support and words of encouragement. So I would have to say the Chinese and the North Koreans, to me, are the largest threat out of all of them, and I would take care of them if I had to pick. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next poll, it says, with all the instability and hostility in the world right now, how are you feeling in general? It looks like 36% said I'm apprehensive but confident. 26% said I'm anxious and concerned. 21% said I won't worry until needed. And 17% said I'm not concerned at all and I'm fine. And for the 17% that said you're totally fine, not worried at all, y'all were pretty stoic because there's a lot of instability going on right now. But I will say for me, I personally am not going to worry until it's needed. Right now, while there is a ton of bad things happening around the world, we are tending to it as fast as we can and in the appropriate manner to tend to it instead of just going off the deep end and going totally extreme. We're handling it in a decently coordinated fashion, the best we can at the moment. But I'm not going to get anxious and concerned just yet because there's a time and place for that, and there's no need to go berserk right now because it could get worse later. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'm a little apprehensive, but not just going off the deep end and freaking out. It's getting pretty serious at this point, I would have to say, and it's something that it looks like, it historically looks like it's leading up to a major conflict, a world war, but you never really know because there's also been very tumultuous times like this in history that didn't lead to that.
you know, just look at the early 2000s. That was a very tumultuous time, and it didn't lead to anything. So who knows? I think that it is something we need to be apprehensive about, but something we don't need to be freaking out about just yet. But hope that does address that well, in my opinion, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was it. That was all for the polls. We're out. Fresh out. So we're moving on to our Super Chat questions. And first up from our Super Chats, we have a $100 donation from longtime channel legend, Mark Incompetent Drone Operator.
No!
And Mark, let us know if those drone operating skills have become more confident, because you've had the incompetent in front of your name for a long time, and surely by now you've become confident or competent. But thank you very much for that support. Hopefully you're confident in being incompetent or competent. But anyways, Mark says, please do your usual thank you in the style of Duncan VR.
And thank you so much for the support, Mark. The massive amount of support. You're always throwing in the traditional Mark Incompetent Drone Operator super chat, and I gotta thank you so much for that. It is a channel tradition at this point. You've been around, Mark, for an incredibly long time, and also a fundraiser legend as well. I think you have personally fundraised, I think, around $40,000 through this channel's fundraisers, all of the different ones that we run. And I gotta thank you so much for helping out all those fundraisers, and I also gotta thank you for just doing what you do. I mean, it's really something. And I'm trying to do this in the best style I can about Duncan VR and how I'd address his super chats. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. In all seriousness, Mark, you've helped this channel to keep on running, and I gotta thank you for sticking with us through thick and thin, because it means a lot to us that folks back us up and see why we do things. And of course, I'm saying that a lot because a decent amount of, well, pretty much all of y'all know what's going on in the background right now out there in the greater world. And it's been absolutely unbelievable to us to actually see the amount of support that we got. For a while, we were actually thinking that no one, not even our own community, the Lee Spring Army, was going to back us up on what we were doing. Although, you know, we've been here and in the background, of course, having to experience everything, all of the torture, tumult, and turmoil of it all, and never really mentioned it in exact detail to y'all. And so we thought, you know, that was the only story y'all would have heard up to that point. Y'all wouldn't have backed us up. And it blew us away that all of y'all have come out and supported this channel. Have, of course, shown that y'all know what's been going on. Although we haven't been, you know, telling the exact story, y'all support what's been going on. Y'all support us and support us doing what we have to do at this point. And I got to thank you so much for being one of those people, Mark, because it means a lot to us that folks have stuck with us through thick and thin. So many of y'all have. And of course, I will be completely amiss to say that some have not been lost. We actually have ended up losing about 2.6 thousand subscribers, but to be quite honest with y'all, if they can't see that we have to protect ourselves from someone who is threatening us and making us live in fear, then we'd rather lose them than, you know, continue to live in fear and cower down to someone who's doing things that are downright very questionable, to say the least, you know, to just try and put that the best way possible. And so I got to thank you so much once again, Mark, for supporting this channel and helping us keep this thing running even now, because thanks to you, thanks to everyone's support in the super chats, which is the only way we can keep this thing rolling. Y'all are the main reason why we'll be able to keep rolling and keep this channel running regardless of what happens in the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Mark. I hope that does address that fairly well. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is a $50 super chat from BC Skyman, longtime channel legend. And BC, thank you very much for that support, as always. He says, answer green-eyed girl's question, please, and love you, enforcers. And thank you very much for the kind words, BC. And let me see if I have that live chat question up here in the spreadsheet. And looking up through here, I am not seeing it right off the bat. So let me see if it was put in a moment ago. Let's see here. Let's see. Enforcer, did you happen to come across it by chance?
I didn't, actually. I was thinking when that came in, I was like, hopefully Matthew is able to find it, but sadly, it looks like he wasn't able to find it.
Well, Green-Eyed Girl, please put your question in the chat, so that way we can answer it, because it has been sponsored by BC, and we must answer it.
And I gotta thank you first off for the support, BC Skyman, and helping the channel to keep on rolling. And of course, being one of the old guards who's backed up the channel and of course supports our side of things, I gotta thank you for that. And also, we will be making sure to get Green-Eyed Girl's question. And so we will wait for Green-Eyed Girl to throw it in the chat because I saw them in here just a moment ago, so I know they're still here. And so with that,
Thank you so much. Oh, wait a minute. Michael Johnson actually copied it. Green-Eyed Girl's question was, do you think Americans will be needed to rescue hostages considering Israel, southern Israel, are experts in hostage rescue? Well, it seems like they may be, because we have heard that special forces have apparently moved into Israel. I believe it was SEAL Team 6 and who else, Matthew?
I was just told it was some kind of special forces group, but they really didn't say exactly who it was, unless they've come out with something different. And also, they're not in Israel yet. They're just around in the surrounding countries.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. We've heard that they're in the area and they're ready to respond if need be. But you are correct. The Israelis are largely experts at special forces insertions, things like that. And so they probably won't need the support, but if they do, they can count on it. And so with that, I hope that does address Green-Eyed Girl's question well, and thank you so much once again for the support, BC Skyman, and helping this thing to keep on rolling. And also, Matthew, really quickly, I actually saw someone in the live chat saying, and this is something that I'm going to address real quick. Someone said, the reason why you lost the subscribers is because you won't let it go. And let me explain this really quickly. We can't let it go because they don't let it go. Like yesterday, I get a tip on Twitter that they're going to start calling up our school and saying that we're going to conduct a ordeal there. I go to the police department at the university and tell them the story, and apparently they've been getting calls where people have been trying to take action against us for weeks on end. It didn't just start just a few days ago when everything on this end started happening. From what we were understood, this has been going on for quite some time. They didn't define the amount of time, but people have been calling in for a while. And how in the world am I supposed to drop something when we are constantly in danger of these people putting our lives in danger? We can't stop anything at that point because we're always having to try and react for our own safety. So, you know, that's really the answer, because we've, throughout the whole year that this has been going on since December 16th of last year, we have constantly been trying to end this thing and find some way to just get along with them and just move on. And they've never wanted that until now. And then they want to act like they're the victim publicly and act like they've never done anything, while people are still calling up our school and probably calling up local police departments as well, trying to get something done to us in some way or another. But with that, hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat question, we have a $50 donation from Jesus UCSB. And thank you very much, Jesus, very much for that support. And Jesus says, Hola, I don't get the Hamas supporters all week attacking people like me and us that defend Ukraine, but we don't or won't defend Palestine. It's apples and oranges. And no Ukrainians ever took Russians prisoners and slaughtered them. Oh, and also, he says, likes up. And we'll say, homie.
And LSA, homie. And thank you so much for the support, Jesus UCSB, the LSA tanker, and helping to keep the channel running. And to answer that question, I don't get why in the world they are condemning people who don't support Hamas. Because here's the thing, you know, like, you can't support a group that crosses a border and mercilessly slaughters civilians. You know, it's like, whatever grievance you have with the country, you can't justify that. Otherwise, going off of that logic, we would have to flip our support in Ukraine to being pro-Russian, because the pro-Russians went in and slaughtered thousands. They've slaughtered tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands over the course of the war of Ukrainian civilians. And we could justify that off of the same things the Palestinians are justifying their massacres on the Israelis by saying that is really their land, they deserve it, they need it. Ethnically, there's a lot of Russians that were in southeastern Ukraine, so let's go in and let's just start setting up camps, you know, and just throwing Ukrainians into them. You could say that same thing and justify that way, going off of a pro-Palestinian logic. But it doesn't make any sense at all. And also, you know, some people are saying, and this is a fair critique because I don't like the idea of civilians dying regardless of what's happened, but some people have been saying, look, the Israelis lost like 2,000 civilians. Now they're leveling the Gaza Strip and they're not even dropping roof tappers onto rooftops to let people get out of the buildings. They're just hitting them directly, and, you know, whatever happens, happens. And that is not great. I'll have to agree with that. But at the same time, when you go across a border and you massacre 2,000 innocent civilians and you're beheading children, which there is proof of, you can't say how your adversary is now going to respond. That's kind of up to them at that point. So if they want to just start carpet bombing Gaza, well, you shouldn't have run across the border and had terrorists beheading children and doing things like that in the hundreds, if not thousands of people over the past few days, because
Now get this. Speaking of the beheadings you just mentioned, horrific, by the way. You do not want to see those images. I promise you don't want to see it. Some people are seeking out these images. That is not wise whatsoever. But the president came out this morning or yesterday and said that he had seen those images, and he was obviously very upset, like anyone would be. And for some reason, this evening, the White House spokespeople have come out and said that those images were not seen by the president, and that he was just going off of what the Israeli officials told him. I'm not sure what the reason is behind that, but I can assure you that the images are real. They are coming out, and it's horrific stuff happening on the ground in Israel, like I've never seen before.
And also, that's another thing that I've seen on this. This has happened both in the war in Ukraine and also in Israel, is that there is hardcore proof. If you go out there and look for it, you will find it quite easily, actually. Hardcore proof of the atrocities that happened. And there are, at this point, I can't really say anything better about them. There are just idiots out there who will go, they're saying that people are massacred. Where's the proof? It's like, well, if you'd open your damn eyes and look around for it, you'd find it. It's not just going to fall in your lap. These people are getting slaughtered. And there's hardcore proof of it. We can't show it on our show. Mainstream news can't show it on their shows because, you can't show that kind of stuff on daylight television. There's actually a broadcasting rule set out by, what is it, man? The Federal Broadcasting...
the FCC?
Yeah, the FCC, the Federal...
Communications something.
Yeah, communications something. I don't know. The FCC. The FCC actually has a rule that until like 9 o'clock at night, you can't show anything extremely graphic. And news organizations actually have to give the mainstream news companies a lot of credit, like Fox and CNN, because they are getting very close to crossing that line on daytime coverage. They are showing some very tough stuff. Very little of it, but still what we've been seeing. And it's horrendous down there. You can't back up people who do stuff like that. Otherwise, you could easily go back in time and support what Hitler did to the Jews in World War II. And there is no way that was excusable. There is no way what Stalin did to the Ukrainians was excusable. There's no way what Mao did to the Chinese in the 60s is excusable. None of that's excusable. And I'm not going to go and change the rule or make an exception for Israel because of some perceived slights or slights that were happening. That still doesn't justify the other side becoming animals and just running across the border and killing every innocent person in sight. And then once the IDF shows up, what do? They don't actually engage them in firefights. They run and then go and try and find another innocent group of civilians to go and execute. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Jesus, because it's been incredibly aggravating to me to see the exact same arguments that were made about the Ukraine war happening in Israel, or Israel, as everyone always wants me to say, is always happening in Israel now as well. And it's absolutely ridiculous that people want to be blind and then sit there and say, well, apparently eyesight's not real because I can't see. It's like, well, you're blind. So, don't say it's not existent for everyone else. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Pointy Ears. And thank you very much for that support. That is very generous of you. And thank you for helping to keep the channel running. And they said, for being the only channel I choose to watch, and they said that they want to give a shout out to Jesus UCSB for apparently helping out a complete stranger too, they said. I've been watching for about the last 200 days, and cheers from Boat Harbor Beach in Tasmania, and question from the chat.
Boat Harbor Beach. That actually sounds like a really cool place. Let's go pull it up. You know what that sounds like, man? It sounds like a Mario Kart level.
It kind of does.
Yeah, it kind of does. Boat Harbor Beach. Let's see. Is that in Tasmania? Wait, he said Tasmania, didn't he? Yeah, he did. This is South Australia. Oh, man, you're getting sleepy. He went, let's see here. Tasmania. There we go. And so here is Boat Harbor Beach.
The water is so blue.
Man, that is nice. That's like Tahiti. Wow, that is really nice. You live in a very wonderful place, I have to say. That is like bathtub water.
That is really clear, man. I bet there's sharks and stuff up in this water.
Oh, you know it. They eating people. Every time someone comes into the water, Matthew, you got Jabberjaw out there sliding the knife and fork together going... But anyways, it's gorgeous, though. It's beautiful. Let's go on to the street view and let's see what it looks like on the street view, because it's a tiny little place. And they do have a street view. You know what this reminds me of? This kind of reminds me of 30A in Florida.
A little bit. Just a little bit more desolate.
Desolate? That's beautiful, though. It kind of looks like England a little bit, you know? Like Cornwall, Devon area.
Yeah, England is your city.
England is more city, but still, really like it. Really beautiful out here. And thank you so much for being here with us for 200 days, pointy ears. And also, Jesus UCSB is a pretty good fellow. He's pretty nice. He's a Lee Spring Army tanker. What more can you say about him? Really cool dude. And also, he has helped out folks on the channel before, you know, answering questions, talking to him and stuff. Gotta say, all in all, pretty nice guy. And also, thank you for choosing this as the only channel you watch. Of course, not against anyone watching other channels, but we are always happy to know that folks watch this channel as their primary one. It tells us that apparently we're doing something right because we're y'all's go-to channel, and it makes us incredibly happy and highly honored to know that that is the case. So thank you so much once again for support, pointy ears. And if I'm looking at your profile picture correctly, that's the pointy ears of a German Shepherd. And so love German Shepherds. We used to actually have some way back in the day when we were kids in middle school. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is a big shout out to Jordan Koch, who puts in a $30 donation and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Jordan, for that support. And also, I think that might be one of your first time supporting the channel as well. So big shout out to you, and thank you for helping to keep this entire operation running, keeping the Enforcers open and ready to give the news. So Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support. You helped this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, this channel would not be possible. It wouldn't be possible for us to continue. And you know something that I find absolutely hilarious? I was actually looking around because people have been telling us stuff, and of course we have to research it for reasons. But some people were talking to me about something that happened a long time ago. So I had to go back looking through. And I went back into the Ukraine war when people were getting demonetized and people were getting stricken from having ads, at least for that day. Remember that, Matthew, when there was an adpocalypse, like in a negative way, where no one was allowed to run ads in the Ukraine war sphere for like 2 days?
Yeah, I remember that.
And so everyone started putting out videos going, how am I going to keep doing this as a job? How am I going to do this as a living? And then we didn't even say anything about it because we never even ran ads. So we just, you know, kept on going the way we had. So that was funny to me looking back at that because, you know, it just made me, it makes you think, you know, especially with what's going on now. People always say that we were in it for the money, but when the ads got turned off, literally everyone in the Ukraine war world, I think, went on to YouTube and made a video talking about how they weren't able to make money anymore. So I was like, that's pretty funny to me, because of course things.
Wait a minute, they're making money on, they're reporting on the Ukraine war?
Yeah, how abhorrent. I mean, doing this as a job,
sick.
Outrageous. These people need to be
reporting
found out.
on the news and getting paid? That's crazy,
report
man.
these people to the IRS, man. This is ridiculous. I mean, there has to be something questionable going on there for them to be doing YouTube as a job. I mean, that's ridiculous. I thought the people on CNN did this for free.
Yeah, I thought they just showed up like, you know, like Wolf Blitzer and people like that. He just shows up because it's his hobby. He just does it for fun.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. Like, this whole entire time, I thought they were actually humanitarians, but no. They do that as a job. Like, ridiculous, honestly. Just absolutely absurd that people do this as a job on YouTube, covering news.
Those reporting bastards.
Honestly, man, really, it's ridiculous. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running, because folks like you do help us to make this thing possible. And also, it's amazing to know that people do support the channel enough to help us to keep this thing rolling. Because, you know, unlike other channels that run everything in the shadows and force you to watch ads, and then you get a sponsor in the middle of a live stream telling you to go buy a product, because, you know, folks dying apparently is something good to market. You know, instead of doing all of that, y'all send in super chats. We thank you for your support individually, and then we also get to answer y'all's questions if y'all have any. And so, with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But I want everyone to remember that real quick, because that's something that always gets me, is how we are very transparent about everything, how we fundraise. We fundraise through YouTube Giving. It's literally the most transparent way you can fundraise on YouTube, and we don't even get to touch the funds, unlike everyone else. And also, we only get supported through super chats, unlike everyone else who runs ads and sponsorships. And then people want to say that we sit around and make money. And I'll tell you all this. If you make a video and you have full ads running, mid-rolls, the ads at the beginning of the video, the ads at the end, and you get about 500,000 views or 400,000 views on that video, you're making roughly anywhere from $1.3 to $1.6 thousand on that video. Just putting that out there for y'all's information, because while people may not be getting a lot of super chats out there, if you ever click on a video and an ad runs and you see it has about 400,000, 500,000 views on it, you can kind of take that as a ballpark running figure, just in case if y'all were wondering, how in the world do people do this for free? Well, they don't. Everyone's doing this as a job. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and also real quick, you know, I don't know how it feels to have the last name Blitzer, like for that wolf fella that does the news on CNN. I don't know how that feels. Like I wonder if he's German.
Geschlick my like man. I mean,
I've never heard anybody with the last name Blitzer anywhere except for that guy.
You know, you got a point. I've never heard of that last name out in the normal world anywhere at all. But still, thank you so much once again for bringing that up, Matthew. I don't know why I was about to address that like it was a super chat, but with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next super chat, we have one from the Duncan VR, who puts in a $21 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support.
Hey!
He says, Ba Muba, oink, pigs mentioned, oink, oink. Enforcer, he revived the commie Kermit. Baba, Kermite, took a hit in Romania. Ba moo meow. His last word was Gazalika Lycan. Moo, oh my, Russians can run. Baba, meow. No respect, I'm telling you, no respect. Oink, snort, ant, ba, moo.
And thank you once again for the support, Duncan VR, and
Oink.
throwing in your traditional. What the hell? That sounds like you're in trouble, man. You're sitting there. But thank you so much once again for the support, Duncan VR, and helping the channel to keep on running. And also, revive the commie Kermit? Yes, I did revive the commie Kermit for a minute. Kermit took a hit in Romania. A hit of that. Call it a boat because we're hitting that dope. But anyways, thank you once again for the support.
Kermit.
We ain't doing that. Kermit is, but geschnick my Leichman, and also oh my. And so I hope we hit. Oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. I almost missed that one. I hope I hit everything in there. So with that, thank you so much once again for support, Duncan VR, and of course throwing in the typical animal noises. It is a tradition on this channel, and we greatly appreciate it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for bringing a little bit of brevity and humor to our show, and also helping
levity.
Levity. That sounds like levitating. But anyways, thank you once again for the support and helping the channel keep on running, Duncan VR. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a super chat from Jesus UCSB once again, who puts in another very generous $50 donation.
Damn!
And Jesus, that is your second support of the night. Huge shout out to you for supporting the channel and helping to keep us running. He says, as a Steelers fan from Vilsec Tank Ranges, let me send a message to the 2.6 thousand followers that left us here following a great Mike Tomlin quote. We want volunteers. And he says something here that's scaring me just a little bit. And he says, LSA homie.
It's a football quote, Matthew. It's a football quote.
Is it?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine to read. It's about football players.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Scare me a little bit.
The quote from Mike Tomlin reads, and this is a quote from Mike Tomlin, we want volunteers. We don't want hostages. And bye, Felicia. And LSA homie. And thank you so much for the support, Jesus UCSB. And when we saw the subscriber drop off, you know, I've got to be honest with y'all, I haven't seen a drop off like that before. We have had a few here and there, never like that before. But I sat there and thought, what do we do? Like, what is our response to this? Do we sit there and go, oh, you know what? You know, our lives are being threatened, but we're just going to drop everything now and hope that they come back. No, we can't do that.
Man, I started scrapping.
man, Matthew, I was sitting over here and I was going, man, that kind of sucks. And Matthew was going, that's I was like, oh man.
I went on the offensive. I was like, no, you aren't going to lie and screw us over. It's like we're going to go on the offensive here, and that's what we did.
But yeah, that's largely what Matthew did. I got to say, but still, I got to thank you so much for the support. And I'd have to say, I'm going to say this. It doesn't matter to me if we have subscribers, if we don't have subscribers. We have to do what's right for us. I can't help that people who haven't even been a part of this whole entire thing that's been going on for a year want to hop in the last 5 days and then get involved. They don't know the story. We know the story. Y'all have heard parts of the story. Y'all have heard us on stream say that someone sent us a death threat. Y'all have heard us say other things like people are, harassing us. Hell, y'all have seen the massive influx of that community in question come into this live stream sometimes in organized raids on the live chat, and we have to end up banning each one of them over like the course of 20 minutes. Y'all have seen all of that. We haven't, and y'all all have been here too, to hear me say every single time, I do not want y'all harassing anybody. Don't go anywhere and harass anybody. Even if they're doing crap to us, that's wrong, and we're not going to stoop down to that level. Y'all have heard me say that too. And if people want to believe after all of that, after everything we've done to try and keep this civil, to try and keep focus on Ukraine, and to try and, of course, stand up for ourselves when it's right, but also try and resolve it whenever possible, and they want to leave even beyond that, that's on them. I can't really control them, and I can't really feel, guilty because of that. How would I? I'm going to sit there and feel guilty that we try and defend ourselves from folks who are threatening to destroy our lives and possibly even end them on a daily basis. I can't feel bad for that. I just have to do what I have to do at this point. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Jesus UCSB. And like the quote said, we aren't holding anyone hostage. If anyone wants to leave the channel and just, unsubscribe or go somewhere else, that's on them. We're not going to hold anyone from doing it. But of course, we encourage people to stay here. It's a great place. Got an amazing community, probably one of the best ones out there on the internet. But if we can't hold them beyond that, they're free individuals. They can do whatever they want. They can go wherever they want. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support, Jesus.
All right, and the next one is going to Jose Diaz, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jose, as well, for that support. And it says, Puerto Rico loves Ukraine, Israel, and the free world.
And thank you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And the LSA does love the free world. Ukraine, Israel, everywhere else around the world, the Koreas, Taiwan, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Europe as a whole, the UK, Canada, the United States. We love the free world everywhere it may be, including Mexico and a whole bunch of other countries that I haven't named out. And of course, if I don't read out a whole list, someone's about to get offended and cry, and they're going to have to cry because I can't name them all out. But still, I thank you so much for the support, Jose Diaz. Of course, the Commodore, actually, I believe the Commandant of Puerto Rico. And I got to thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you have helped to make this thing possible. And also, it's great to have a visit from the Commandant of Puerto Rico tonight. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Patrick Mills, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Patrick, as well, for that support. And he says, do you think Russia is pushing its troops hard now because they're trying to take advantage of what's going on in Israel?
I think they may be trying to do that, but then it fell face flat because they just don't have an ability to conduct an offensive at this point. So, yes, I would say yes to that, but it didn't really work in their favor anyways. And also, the war in Israel is almost completely detached from the war in Ukraine as far as the ground dealings go. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to BC Skyman yet again. And this time he puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, BC, very much. He says, what defense does the U.S. have against he said a hemp attack, but I think he meant to say an EMP attack. He said, it would send us back to the Stone Age.
From what I understand, BC Skyman, an EMP attack can only occur from a nuclear weapon right now. I don't think there's a specially made EMP yet, but I could be wrong on that, because a lot of people say that there is an individual EMP kind of weapon, but I haven't ever heard of it, so I'd have to declare ignorance on that end and just go with it being a nuke. Our defense against that could probably be Patriot missiles if it's a shorter range nuke. Against an ICBM, however, there really is no good defense against an ICBM, so there really is no way to defend against an EMP from what I understand right now, but I'm sure that we're working on a way to figure out how to intercept an ICBM so that way we don't get the effects of an EMP and also a massive fireball. So with that, I thank you so much once again for support, BC Skyman. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Bernard Rubin, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much as well, Bernard. He says, last night I was looking at a World War I wiki article. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'm not sure what that part was about. But he says,
your judo well.
but I was confused to see Russian armored vehicles. I'm sorry, what now? He says, then I looked at the title and stuff, and, Battle of Avdiivka 2022, it was time for bed.
Huh? Wow.
Bernard, what in the world? I'm not understanding. I gotta admit, I'm not getting it.
What are the charges? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal? Get your
Bernard is speaking like from 2030 or something, because I'm not getting it. Let's see here. But was confused to see Russian armored vehicles. Then I looked at the title, Battle of Avdiivka. I'm still not really sure. I'm not sure what this
I
means.
get it now. I get it now. He's talking about, he was reading an article. It's a joke. He's talking about the Battle of Avdiivka looks so much like a World War I battle with the tactics they're using. He thought he was reading a World War I article. Now I get it, Bernard. I'm so sorry. That went over our heads so badly, we had to start clicking our 2 brain cells left to try and figure out what that meant. And it was literally right in front of us the whole time. I'm so sorry about that. But thank you once again, Bernard, for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And I have to say, that was such a damn good joke. I didn't even get it. That was a deep one, and I gotta say, a really good one at that. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Bernard. We now have to quickly move on, so that way I don't remonstrate myself in front of everyone. Dubious, so narcissistic. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support in all seriousness, and sorry that we didn't get the joke right off the bat. It may be our tiredness getting the best of us. But with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And the next one goes to That Mom, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, That Mom, for that support. And she says, call your family. You never know how long you got with them.
And I thank you so much for the support, That Mom. And we will make sure to call up the family. Our family is actually here right now. We've got folks here in the house.
Hey, Ma.
Hey, Ma. But still, thank you so much once again for support, That Mom, and helping the channel to keep on running. And you never know how long you have your family. You've always got to appreciate the folks you have in your life, and hopefully y'all's families are good families, at least your immediate family, because that's really all you got in the world that actually cares for you. No one else out there in the world gives a damn about you. Nobody. And that's something that, of course, we've learned over the past...
Laid out there like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, over the past 2 years, we've learned that incredibly well. People are more than happy to come and try and kick your teeth in if it means that they can get a quick little up in the world. And so always make sure, if you're on good terms with your family, to always call them and always check on them, because they're really all you got out there in the world. And, of course, you got the LSA too, but most of the time you don't have anything else. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, That Mom. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And someone said, I think Mark Gagne said, what if you have an estranged family? Well, I mean, that does happen, and that is unfortunate. But you can still have a family outing with them if you choose to. It probably just won't be as cordial as you want it to be. It probably, you can always, get in a sparring match or something, like a fist fight if you wanted to. But,
You could always invite him out for a little bit of a quail shooting and bring Dick Cheney with you. You can always.
Damn.
Damn,
the hell?
son. I mean, I'm just saying. He sat there and he went, Paul. Oh, he was like, oh no. But anyways, I'm just kidding.
It'd be like, I came over for my family time. What's up? Smacking your fist.
Man, go duck hunt with me. I'm feeling all wilderness in here.
But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to George Ferguson, who puts in a $10 donation and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, George, for that support, and we do appreciate it very much. Also, up next, we have a $15 super chat from Margaret Hemsley, who says, buy your parents a thank you gift from me, please, and take a live chat question.
Thank you so much for the support, Margaret Hemsley. I will make sure to try and buy them a thank you gift. Of course, we are greatly appreciative of our parents. It really is actually a big blessing that we're able to live in the basement and just pay rent to them, because the landlords out there in the world, because we actually did move in to an apartment for a while we were doing this show. Y'all may remember the person who was slamming the broom handle into the side of the apartment wall at one point later on in the night.
They lost their mind, man. They got PTSD, I think. They banged on the wall so loud and they screamed like they were unhinged. And the enforcer was in there talking about, all right, and with that one, we're on to the next question, like as loud as he could. And then we heard, whoa, 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 whoa. hold it down, I can't sleep, man, stop. It's like, what?
Man,
I said, who the hell's that? What was that? And then the enforcer said, I don't know.
Man, I said, whoa, hey, it's because I heard this right behind my head, dude. I heard. And I was like, what the hell's going on?
I heard it too from like the living room of that little tiny apartment. I was like, what was that? It sounded like somebody like banging on the front door. I was like, I think somebody wants in. And the enforcer was like, I don't know where that came from. I don't know.
Oh man, that was something. But yeah, we did move into an apartment for a while, and also you never know this until you're in an apartment, because you always think, apartment living will be fine. And then stuff breaks down and nobody takes care of it for like a week or 2 or 3, you know, like important
That thing
stuff.
that we had flooded, like it literally flooded from the water, like came up to the like stairs and everything in it. And they didn't even come in there like go get the water out for like, I think 3 or 4 days or something.
Yeah.
It's like, what the
Like,
hell,
we
man?
would
I
be
understand you got a lot of flooding going on, but come on, there's water literally in here.
We would be going to college, and we would have to put on waders to go out the front door because there's that much water at the bottom of the stairs. You know, you never realize how bad it was. And also, we were paying as much for rent out there as we are here, and I'd rather pay it here. So, you know, I got to thank them greatly, Margaret, for letting us be here, because honestly, you know, once you turn 18, you are kind of on your own. It was very generous of them to even allow us to be here and pay rent, in my honest opinion. And so we've been greatly appreciative to them, and they've been amazing parents. Everything that y'all see on stream and how we act is the way we act everywhere. And I got to give them a whole load of credit for making us who we are, for really the better. But some people will, of course, say it's for worse, but, you know, I don't really take input from some folks who say that, because then you look at them and you're like, well, you know, it's kind of hard to take input from you know what I mean? But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat, we have a $10 donation from Dark Warrior 137, who says Japan's flag is ironic. The USS Enterprise was called a Big E during World War II, and that carrier was essential in beating Japan. In Morse code, E is just 1 dot, meaning their flag is a big E.
That's deep. That's deep, actually. I like that. And I thank you so much for the support. And that is pretty ironic, you know? And also, the Japanese swore that they had sank the USS Enterprise, I think at least like 4 separate times. And then it just kept on showing up in battles. They'd be like, what the hell? And it was still there. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we have been told by the director to speed things up a little bit, and I'd have to agree, because we have to get up once again at 5 in the morning, so we'll be getting only a few hours of sleep, so we have to make sure to speed things up, get to some live chats, and then round out tonight's stream. But with that, I thank everyone once again for the support. We're going to be putting a cutoff on from this point forward. We're going to read the remaining 5 super chats, and then move on into live chats, and then end. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Hoodoo, Texas, who puts in a $10 donation and says, Simon's pulled out of maintaining Russian railroads, and there has to be a significant erosion of Russian railways and maintenance, and any damage probably magnified.
Probably so. I would agree with that for the most part, the assessment. The damage is large, regardless of what's happening. The damage is certainly large, and it's going to start costing the Russian government a pretty penny. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, GW North said, enforcer mom stomping on the ceiling? Nah. This house is not built like that apartment. There's no insulation whatsoever in apartment walls, and I literally did not know you could hear that well through the wall. So when that person banged on it and yelled through it, I was like, I kind of wanted to yell back and say, wait a minute, you could hear that well through the wall the whole time? Like, man, what did y'all hear over here?
remember, Matthew, when we went, oh, well, at least it's quiet around here. At least there's no dogs. And then one day we were sleeping and you just heard from below the floor. And I was like, oh, my God, there's a dog down there. And you can hear it loud as day. Apartments.
Yeah, I didn't understand you could hear that. Apartment living sucks. Like, I'm just going to say that straight up. It sucks.
And also, as president of the United States, if y'all vote for me in 2040, I am going to push heavily for every single state to start rezoning a large amount of land or opening up new zoning for low density residential housing. Is not going to be massive houses. It's going to be like, 2,500, 3,000 square foot house. That's still pretty damn big. But, fairly decent sized houses, but enough of them that it actually fixes the damn real estate prices around the United States right now, because they have gotten way too high. A house is unaffordable at this point. Even a very small, like 1,200 square foot, what would have been called back in the day a starter house, those nowadays are like $500,000 and $600,000. That's just too much, and there needs to be more housing because there are so many people that need an actual house, and a lot of people are getting stuck in apartments. And I don't think
it's about time in this country, and in my opinion, that we have mandated sound insulation in the walls of apartments, also the floors and the ceilings. They have to put something in the wall because you can't just have sheetrock in between two different apartments. That should be probably an ordinance or a law or something. You have to build your apartments where they're actually not just like a thin sheet of paper. Like, come on, man. It's a one-time investment. Just put the money in it.
I would agree completely. I think that's also something that needs to be done as well. My presidency is going to be one that is filled with small little adjustments and changes. The kind that nobody focus on, but the kind that when I sit there and by the end of 4 years, y'all will be going, damn, I don't hear my neighbors in the apartments anymore because of him. I'm going to vote for him again. And so that way I can go on and do some other cooler things like high-speed rail, which I still think would be pretty neat. As long as it's not done by Amtrak, I'm not going to lie. But with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And also, BlakeNet said, low residential is expensive in services. Yeah, kind of, but that's also another thing. I think we need to start shifting U.S. job interests away from everyone getting a bachelor's degree and towards encouraging people to go and get trades, because there's a lot of people that aren't getting trades anymore, and tradesmen are becoming very rare, and that's jacking up the prices of services as well, not just utilities that you may be talking about, but just general repair services for a house. But with that, we have to make sure to keep rolling. We are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ed, who puts in a 10 and says, hey, enforcers, it's Irish Ed from Pennsylvania. And what do you think the odds are that Ruskies cloned Colonel Klink and also Schultz to run their SMO? And you two are great young men. And go LSA.
And thank you, Ed. And thank you, Ed. And to answer your question, yes, they certainly did clone Schultz because they are always saying it on Russian TV, Schultz! But with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again, Ed from...
And
okay, go ahead.
And we have a 6 from Margaret Hemsley, who says, joke. And this is a joke. They said, what occupies the last 6 pages of the LATA user manual? Pause. Answer.
A train schedule.
The bus and train timetables. Live chat question, please.
I actually knew that one. I knew it because I saw the super chat earlier. But still, thank you so much for the support, and we will make sure to get a live chat. Also, I like that joke. It was a pretty good one. And with that, what's the live chat?
And the live chat question goes to Jim Kalari, who says, when do you think the U.S. would enact a Defense Production Act to expand ammo production?
I think we already have, if I'm correct, Matthew.
I think we did in a limited form, if that's possible, if I'm remembering correctly, to manufacture shells to send over to Ukraine, I think.
So, to answer that, it has either already happened or I think it'll be happening in maybe a few months' time, maybe 3 or 4 months. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a 5 from Manuel Suezo. And Manuel does not leave a comment, but as always, thank you very much, Manuel, for being a longtime channel viewer and always supporting the channel. Then we have a 5 from Dean London, who says, keep it up, stand your ground, and do what you do.
And thank you so much for encouraging us to keep it up and stand our ground, and we will stand our ground. No matter what the cost may be, we are going to stand our ground. And I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a 5 from Mark Gagne, who says, that's why I like this channel so much. You won't show those very disturbing videos in LSA. And also, YouTube definitely would not like that. I've actually seen Twitter, which is being marketed now as the free speech capital of the world, with pretty much everything allowed on it, even, Romania type stuff on it, if you know what I mean. But they're taking down these really horrific videos, of atrocities happening inside of Israel, because that's how bad they are. Even Twitter is taking them down. and they pretty much let everything go. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'll be honest with you. You know what's funny? And I'll just say this really quickly as an aside, is that everyone's into the idea of trying to make a company or a group or something free speech until they end up running it. And that's what a lot of y'all saw with Twitter. And if you ever go around on YouTube, and it's also like this channel, you'll see it there as well. Free speech is a fundamental right as a nation and a society. But I've got to be honest with y'all, I just don't really think free speech can exist on a private company or private institution or something like a YouTube channel live chat. It doesn't exist anywhere, because watch this. You know, people say that we don't have free speech in our live chat. Go over to someone else's live chat and say things that are against the grain over there and see what happens. You will end up getting banned there too. They just pretend like they don't. And that's something that it was kind of funny to me, because when I heard that, you know, someone bought it out and said, oh, it's going to be free speech, I said, there is no way in hell it will. Watch, that'll last 3 months and then it'll be over. I didn't say that here on stream, but I said that to Matthew, and lo and behold, 3 months later, people started getting banned for certain things. And I was like, I knew it, because it's just going to flip-flop. Whoever's in charge, if they're not just straight up neutral and they're leaning to one side or the other, they're going to ban people from the other side. So I was like, you know, saw that coming. But still, what was the question again, Matthew?
There really wasn't a question. It was just he said he liked the channel so much.
Oh,
but one thing real quick on that point, I know we're running out of time here, but I got to say that there is a need for regulation on the internet, and maybe one day if Enforcer actually goes into government and does what he says he's going to do, that is something that needs to be addressed. We have to respect the First Amendment. You do have freedom of speech, but at the same time, if you're not allowed to do something in real life, there are limits on free speech. Then it shouldn't be a free-for-all and anonymous on the internet, because it creates an accountability issue. People can say whatever they want. They can make threats. They can post fake information. They can post lies, and they can do it anonymously, so they feel like they have a shield. And to me, that needs to be taken away. If you go on the internet, your real identity should be attached to whatever you do there, and that is something that needs to be changed within the next 5 years, because the internet's becoming like the Wild West, and people are losing it. And people are getting crazy in real life, and they're taking that frustration out on the internet now. And it's going to become a much worse problem over the next 5 to 10 years.
And I'll have to agree. And I know that a lot of people, and I was actually one who would be strongly against that idea around 3 years ago or so. I would have said, no way in hell that I would ever allow anything like that to happen on the internet. Until you get into our position. And then you have hundreds of people who make it their job to constantly try and harass you and ruin your life through the anonymity that the internet provides. And then you go, it doesn't really seem that good anymore. You know, and also, it doesn't seem right that people can anonymously threaten you on the internet, or, you know, do things that would be considered, you know, like stalking and other things normally. And then because it's the internet, people go, oh, well, it's just imaginary land. I mean, the internet's become so important now in this current year to society here in America, it may as well be something akin to being in the public or just living a normal life. And so that, I've got to be honest with y'all, accountability is something that I think should happen. I'm not saying that your home address is under your account name every single time you post something. Obviously not. But what I'm saying is that there should be information given about accounts, like who they are, where they are, and if, you know, of course, you need to pursue any kind of action, either criminal investigations or, you know, legal action or anything, there's a way to quickly get that from any account, and you know, and it's actually registered. Because the amount of crazy people who are not good, well, are not well in the head, that get to do things and get away with it on the internet is absolutely absurd when you actually find out. And it's crazy, because this would never happen in real life. The stuff that's happened to us on the internet, if it had happened physically here in the city of Birmingham, Alabama, where we live, police would have already arrested these people for what they're doing, because it's technically a crime by statute. And so, you know, of course, it's the internet, so it's just a Wild West, and nothing really happens over it. But I would say, I would agree with Matthew. Accountability is a thing that's needed. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Gilly Flower, who puts in a 2 and says, "Glory to Israel and Ukraine," and take a question from the chat.
And we will, and thank you once again for the support, and Slava Ukraini, and God bless Israel. And so with that, what do we got?
All right, and also, before we move on to our question from the chat, we also had a 2 from Midget Hobbit, who said, "If beheaded pics were shown, will view of Palestine change?"
Beheaded pigs. Are you talking about the ones of the Israelis? I mean, I'm still in pro-Israel. Really, no matter what happens at this point, because the Hamas terrorists were the ones who cross the border and kill thousands of Israeli citizens. So, you know, that is what it is. So, I have to be honest with you. I'd say, yeah, my support for Israel is pretty hardcore at this point, especially with what we've seen. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving into our live chat questions. Up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream: Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Tightlines LSO, Kevin J, and Rumpelstiltskin. They said, "Hi, LSAers. Tonight's Morse code is: Russia has lost enough armor today. It could have equipped a small nation's army. Long live the LSA."
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that right on the nail. And also, thank you, Matthew, for getting them. That is the Morse code message, and it's entirely true. Some armies don't even have that many armored personnel carriers and tanks in them, and the Russians were able to lose all of it in a day, which is pretty impressive. And so with that, hope that does address that further well. And Jim, we know that entirely well, with pictures of our house and also our law school circling around out there on the internet, and everyone saying, hey, why don't y'all go harass them? We know that you can't get tracked down on the internet. But with that, hope that does address both of those things fairly well. And we are going to be getting 3 live chats tonight because we have to get up very, very early in the morning tomorrow, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. So we're on to the first one.
This one goes to the Midwestern, who says, "Did you gents see the threat issued by Hamas today?"
I did not, actually. Matthew, did you hear about it?
I believe the threat was issued by Hamas and directed toward the United States. If we got involved whatsoever, then I believe Hamas said they would attack us.
Oh. Well, I'd like to see them try, and if they do, we would need to go in there and just tell the Israelis, step aside real quick, and then just go and flatten them ourselves, because they want to talk crap like that. The United States doesn't take crap like that. Listen, folks, I don't take crap like that. The United States shouldn't take crap like that. Someone wants to talk like that, you've got to go and respond steel for steel. So, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Chris, who says, "I agree with Israel, but will this make tensions high, and will this be the start of World War III?"
It will make tensions high. We don't know if it's going to be the start of World War III, but it may be the start of a large regional war in the area. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on into the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
And the last question of the night goes to Mac, who says, "Will the Rasputitsa make landmines harder to find later, and will they sink into the mud?"
The Rasputitsa will not make the mines hard to find. The mines aren't going to sink, but if you walk over the mud, you will sink into it, or you will have a very slushy time. So it's not going to make the mines go deep underground, at least from how I understand it. It's just going to make the surface incredibly difficult to work with. And so with that, I hope that does address that question the best I can. And with that, it is the end of tonight's stream. I have to thank you all so much once again for coming tonight. At the peak, there were 6.5 thousand of y'all here and 27,000 of y'all overall. We are entirely honored to run the news for every single one of y'all tonight. And I hope that we've been able to keep up our quality of news reporting that we have been able to conduct for nearly 600 days at this point. We're only 5 days away from the 600th day. If y'all were new to the channel tonight and did enjoy, make sure to subscribe and also like and comment, because it helps this channel to keep on running. Well, actually, subscribing doesn't count for anything, really. YouTube doesn't even care anymore. But if you do subscribe, it makes us happy, and it encourages us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army never dies.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you for another great stream. Slava Ukraine, God bless Israel, and smack, smack.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.